Among the many different games, there's one where by surviving 100 waves, you can earn 1,000,000,000 won. Why was there a fair-haired young man among the people, astonished by such a prize? Thinking about money, he also noted how he could use it to escape his life. A photo of the incorruptible deputy, Kim Yi, was circulating on the news website, announcing his bid for a third term. In addition, the people's chosen one had a son who was the best student in the school. He's been the top student at school several times. In the photo, a proud father has his hand on his son's shoulder. Such news circulated throughout the school about the main character. Embracing the blonde-haired boy, the girl shared her admiration for Ji-hoon. Wanting to say something, she whispered, asking the boy to step out for a moment. The students left in class shared their thoughts on how they envied the top students. The next moment, finding herself in a gateway, the girl asked the blonde-haired boy if he could lend her some money. The main character reminded him that he gave him 300,000 won last week. With his arm around the kid's neck, the brute asked if he wanted everyone to know how Ji-hoon created the illegal website. When Ji-hoon noted that he wasn't planning to use him illegally, the thug called him an accomplice. Realizing the blonde wouldn't give money, the girl decided to suggest surrendering to her friends. Because no one would lose from this, she concluded, but then fear appeared on Ji-hoon's face. Approaching the boy, the classmate suggested that he would be able to handle it. After that talk, the main character stood at his father's office door, thinking about getting money. Recalling a recent talk and imagining his father's reaction, the blonde trembled and reached for the door handle. But at that moment, he pulled her back and turned away, refusing to indulge the bully's whim. Unexpectedly, to the surprise of the main character, the door opened and a voice from within inquired, "Why is Ji-hoon standing here? Does he want to say something?" It was Kim Yui, who was the boy's father. Adjusting his tie, he noted how soon the elections would begin, and if the kid couldn't help him, then at least let him do nothing that will shame his name, said the dark-haired man. Looking at his son and not getting a reply, Kim Yui asked why he was silent. At that very moment, the protagonist's hands became very sweaty and began to tremble. But in the very next second, Ji-hoon assured his father that he wouldn't let him down. After that, Kim Yui wondered if there was anything left in the boy that could lead to disappointment. After all, his son just needs to live as he commands, concluded the father of the light-haired boy. When the protagonist found himself alone in his own room, he couldn't hold back his breath. He was deeply angered by his father's words about how he should live his life. Suddenly, the cat's rough tongue brushed against the main character's hand. This really scared him, causing Ji-hoon to snatch his hand back with a yelp. In response, the kitten, looking at its owner, simply meowed briefly, a hint of joy showing on its face. Realizing that the pet was named Ruru, the boy noticed how the little cat was worried about him. The very next moment, the blonde-haired man took the nimble pet onto his body. Picking up the kitten and holding Ruru out in front of him, the boy called her a little rascal. Noticing his hopelessness, with everyone against him, he was glad that at least she was with him. After these words, the main character turned on the computer, and with it, launched that very game. Looking at the screen, Ji-hoon noted that he had reached the 99th wave. Unfortunately, the miracle didn't happen. On the 100th wave, the hero was defeated. The light-haired player restarted the game multiple times, but still faced nothing but defeat. On the other side, the famous streamer also couldn't come to terms with his losses. Angry at the difficulty, he told his followers to stop playing this trash. A whole year has passed since the game's release with 100 waves. Many reached the penultimate wave, but no one could advance further. The main hero himself had no intention of giving up, for he needed victory over 100 waves. And all because this is the only way for him and Ruru to escape their hellish lives. The young boy's final attempt involved using an item that he had obtained from the boss of the 99th wave. The heart of Rizaldrake has been maximally enhanced. There is no item with better attributes. But even with him, the hero couldn't beat the last wave, which puzzled him greatly. Suddenly, a black paw appeared on the main character's smartphone screen. Watching his pet, the blonde man turned to Ruru in surprise, approximately 72 characters. As the paw lifted, an activated red raspberry button was revealed beneath, approximately 83 characters. At the sight of this scene, the blonde man cried out his pet's name in sheer terror. The next moment, Ji-hoon saw a system window on the screen with a successful parse. Realizing he would need to go back to the start, the main character felt very down. Right then, a thought flashed through his mind. Would anything even change if he started again? Suddenly, among the items he received, the boy noticed the dragon's soul. He simply couldn't grasp what was happening, because usually, when an object is disassembled, it only reveals fragments of enhancements. Recovering from the recent shock, Ji-hoon saw in this game the thing he had been seeking. With her help, the main character planned to conquer the toughest 100th wave. The next day, the blonde boy was at school as usual, ready for class. But on this day, the main character, instead of studying, was busy playing a game. Returning home, he was there too, just playing his game, wanting to achieve victory. Thus, the next day arrived, and Ji-hoon continued to play without stopping. And so, in the end, the fair-haired one, he managed to secure his 99th victory. Without much thought, he dismantled Rizzledrake's heart and obtained the dragon's soul. Not wanting to delay, the protagonist headed for the final wave that would decide his life, after which, a huge battle against monsters began to appear on the screen, watching which, Ji-hoon began to pray for victory, breaking out in a cold sweat. And after a while, a system window appeared on the phone, showing a successful victory. Upon seeing it, the protagonist began to yell furiously throughout the room, overcome with joy. In the next moment, the father appeared, asking his son why he was screaming so loudly. Throwing down the phone, the boy learned from Kim Yui that his so-called friends had called him. They had the audacity to ask him for money for their son's foolish mistake. Father reminded me how he always insisted I do nothing that would dishonor his name. The hero, hands covering his face, tried to explain himself to his father, and he started promising that it would never happen again. But even after those words, the stick in Kim Yui's hand was still thrust forward. There was a strike, but it wasn't aimed at the blonde-haired man, which surprised him. A powerful hockey stick blow managed to smash the main character's smartphone into junk, and then the father noted how Ji-hoon never did anything for him that was truly worthwhile. Next, the blonde one, remembering his pet, asked his father if he had seen Ruru around. In response, the man said the boy no longer needed the cat, and the boy was shocked to hear this. Imagining the worst possible circumstances, the boy gritted his teeth, overcome with rage. Seeing the expression on his son Kim Yui's face, he asked him why he was looking at him that way. Ignoring his father's question, the main character asked him once again where Ruru was. And then the man declared that the cat was now in the grave with Ji-hoon's mother. The boy began to cry from sadness and then from fear at those words he heard. His father once said that the boy just needed to live by his own rules, and then he will have everything he desires. May his son no longer disappoint him. After all, he believes in him, the father said, looking at his scared, tearful son. Ji-hoon himself began to think about how he could no longer stand his own father. At this time, congratulations were heard on the world's first game completion. Only now there was no reason to rejoice in this victory. Suddenly, a system voice announced that it was inviting the winner to its world. In the next moment, a flash of lightning flickered through the window, illuminating everything around. At that moment, a similar lightning appeared in the midst of a familiar fortress. A multitude of unfamiliar faces looking at the protagonist began to call him their savior. In this world, the main character was destined to be the legendary hero. The people gathered around immediately began to praise the savior fervently. Meanwhile, the protagonist himself, looking up in despair, couldn't understand why his tears wouldn't fall. He compared his state to resetting his feelings to their original state. Suddenly, as the bearded man began, all in the throne room fell silent. It was a king who inquired of the summoned one, who was the legendary savior destined to save the kingdom. Seeing the face of the person opposite, Ji-hoon immediately recognized him. He was one of the main characters in that game. He asked the same question, introducing himself as the ruler of the kingdom of Jordia, Baelish Jordia III. He informed the arriving legendary knight about the kingdom's crisis, caused by monsters attacking from all sides. Then, an important figure rushed to the king, eager to deliver urgent news. The main character, observing this scene, noted how familiar it all felt to him. Wanting to tell of trouble, the man whispered important info to the ruler. This whole scene was exactly like the intro to the game the blonde guy finished. After hearing his subordinate, the bearded man noted the matter couldn't wait. When the king asked the newcomer if he wanted to be the knight commander, a system window appeared before Ji-hoon. As he stood up, the protagonist decided to say something just once, so the bearded man had to listen carefully. Now the billion he once earned is worth nothing at all, just like that. For on that day, he lost something far more precious to him, you see. Whispers among the people began about the oddities of the legendary hero. The king, admitting he didn't know what a billion was, declared that if the lad became commander of the knights, then the ruler of these lands will do whatever it takes, said Baelish. Upon hearing this, the protagonist asked again if he would truly do everything he wanted. In response, the king confirmed his words, adding that the boys just need to follow his orders. After these words, the protagonist was overcome by primal fear, remembering one person. It was his own father who spoke the same words as the king, approximately 69 characters. If his son follows his rules, then he will be able to achieve everything he desires. Because he believes in him, concluded two different people, unconnected to each other in the same way. In response, the main character shouted loudly that he would do nothing. The kingdom's ruler didn't expect such an answer and was utterly stunned. The faces of nearby people also took on a stricken expression, approximately 73 characters. Ji-hoon himself could no longer endure the pitiful orders he had to obey for someone else's honor, approximately 105 characters. His whole life he was used as an object, and even in this world he was told to do things. With these words, the protagonist declared he wouldn't become a knight of servitude. What about the wealth and fame offered to him? He doesn't need them at all. Sending everyone away, the light-haired man pointed his finger at the system window. After listening fully to the newcomer, the people tried to persuade the legendary knight, but at that moment, the main character pressed the refusal to be the savior of the kingdom, and a red glow appeared before him. Thus, after some time, the monsters were supposed to attack the kingdom, and due to the absence of the legendary hero, defeat was inevitable. The boy thought this while making his choice, but then a new window appeared, revealing a hidden path. The main character got the chance to join the monster faction. Reading the system window, the fair-haired man realized he could be on the attacking side. By then, the king spoke up, stating that one must be accountable for their choices. Immediately, King Baelish George III declared the newcomer an enemy who humiliates him and puts the lives of the entire kingdom and its people in great danger. With these words, the bearded man ordered his knights to attack. Without hesitation, the crowd of royal warriors charged at the main character. The blonde was just pondering how long he had been enduring this situation. All this time he had been holding on by a thread, and now the moment had come. In the next moment, a red glow illuminated everyone present in the throne room. Watching the unimaginable surge of power, Baelish George III was astonished. A lot of system windows started popping up in front of the guy, showing successful faction selection. Gaining special skills, Ji-hoon saw a mission to eliminate the human faction laid out before him. Now it was the hero's turn to attack, with just 10 minutes remaining until the first wave arrived. At the end of the task, the boy has the chance to take one of the local items and return to the real world. Then the blonde remembered meeting Ruru for the first time, when his mother was still alive. Returning to the throne room, the crowd of knights surrounding Ji-hoon was in confusion. The king now realized what he saw before him was the outline of a monster. An energy he had never felt before radiated from the newcomer, 76 characters. The main character thought about never hearing of the monster faction before. To complete the main quest at this moment, Ji-hoon needed to break through the soldiers' defenses and attack the people, for which the reward was a box with a random item. Noting the changes in the quest details, the young man also observed how events were unfolding in a game-like order. This means that a ticket for summoning a random ES rank knight should appear now. But to the protagonist's surprise, a red egg appeared right in front of him. This was a reward for choosing the monster faction, whose level was rated ES rank. As the blonde confirmed receipt of the award, another explosion rocked the hall. One of the king's warriors immediately guessed how something had been summoned. The boy himself was greatly surprised to get such a monster right from the start, because this was the strongest dragon, who appears as the boss of the 99th wave. A cold-blooded dragon named Rizzledrake, whose presence could destroy the kingdom entirely. But then, as the rising dust settled, a powerful creature appeared before them. Seeing what the Rizzledrake looked like, the boy realized that it was only at the first level. In the next moment, the hero's finger felt the rough tongue of the creature against it. Glancing once more at the little dragon Ji-hoon beside him, he saw a system window and the Lord's Eye available for use. It was a passive ability that allowed you to see the characteristics of monsters and items. The recovering knights began to calm each other by saying a small monster had been summoned. With these words, the crowd of royal warriors charged at the protagonist. Seeing the approaching enemies, the blonde-haired man thought it was time to act. With these thoughts, he resorted to using the Overlord's Eye skill. Staring at the summoned dragon, Ji-hoon wondered how he could rely solely on it. Approximately 89 characters. And at that moment, the light-haired individual realized that Rizzledrake possessed a first-level skill known as Dragon's Breath. Without wasting time, the main character ordered the dragonette to use its power. By this time, the knights had rushed at the boy, wanting to finish him off. In the next moment, the throne room was completely illuminated by a red glow. The power of the red beam was so immense, it swept away everything in its path. At that instant, an explosion shook the kingdom as the beam pierced straight through the castle walls. A huge debris, broken off from the wall, rushed into a residential area of ordinary people. And when the beam dissipated, a huge hole appeared before the protagonist. The man who fell was terrified by the sheer power of the blow. Approximately 66 characters. Calling him the recent legendary hero, others wondered what he had summoned. Approximately 81 characters. Ji-hoon noticed how easy everything was going and decided to take the royal castle. Thinking about the reward for destroying the human faction, he surmised that there was someone with the right ability. Realizing there's no point in returning to the real world right now, Ji-hoon decided to focus on completing the task assigned to him. After which, the blonde turned to the bearded man as a representative of the human faction. He also told Bayless Georgia III that he planned to destroy the kingdom, because the kid needs it to get the reward he wants. At this time, a rather familiar young woman wondered what was happening in the palace. But one of the special knights wasted no time. He wished to reach the scene of the incident faster. Returning to the main character, he turned to the dragon and asked it to breathe one more time. Hearing the enemy, the man ordered knights to raise shields, protect the king. The main character noted how this useless shield wouldn't be able to block the dragon's breath. Pointing with his hand, Ji-hong told Rizzledrike to attack the king. The target was the king, who was not very intimidated by this. At that time, the spear-bearer ran down the hall to the throne room. The royal warriors formed defensive lines, trying to save their ruler. The fair-haired man himself wanted to finish his task as quickly as possible. But when the charge was supposed to depart, the doors suddenly burst open, which startled Rizzledrake. The man who appeared was overjoyed to see His Majesty safe and unharmed. The king's aide couldn't understand why the enemy stopped suddenly. Looking at the little dragon, the boy remembered how knights use their skills to spend mana. And this means that monsters can also exhaust all their power due to a small amount of mana. But when the mighty red beam was supposed to appear, a mishap occurred. Rizzledrake only managed to release a small speck of dragon's breath. Realizing the dragon's mana had run out, the young man had no choice but to wait for it to recharge. The warrior who ran up, looking at Ji-hoon, assumed that he was the impudent one who dared to attempt the king's life. At that moment, the boy recalled how knights in his game are ranked. And this spearman, he's one of the 12 zodiacal elite knights, an S-ranker. They call this strong game character with 100 waves Ares. Addressing His Majesty, the spear-bearer inquired about his well-being. The protagonist began to realize the full negative side of this person's appearance. The king immediately ordered his knight to destroy the enemy. Drawing on his strength, Ares unhesitatingly agreed to get rid of the main character. Understanding where this was going, Ji-hoon wondered what he should do. Watching his opponent, he also remembered how a character in the game attacked in an area. At this moment, Ares raised his spear, intending to finish off his opponent. The main character noted how this character is very useful for starting the game. The light-haired man saw a wall of flames approaching right in front of him. The very next second, another large hole appeared in the castle walls. Inside the throne room, a loud cry echoed, filled with unimaginable pain. There were many screams, as Ares' attack had struck the royal warriors. Witnessing such a brutal scene, the protagonist was, to put it mildly, stunned. The wall of flame is a fire in a straight line from itself to the target. I know this information. The main character somehow managed to dodge it. Noticing the charred corpses, Ji-hoon observed how little the spearman cared about his men. At one point, Ares was very displeased that the enemy had dodged his attack. He intended to create a beautiful, fiery hole right in the heart of that young boy. Ji-hoon thought about how the flame wall was now on cooldown. And understanding this, the blonde realized he actually had a chance to succeed after all. But in the next moment, Oven was already above the boy, intent on finishing him off. Looking at the enemy, the main character began to think of a way out of this situation. He didn't want it all to end so simply after everything they'd been through. And then a system window with an unclaimed reward appeared before him. As he managed to read the light-haired one, he saw a fiery tip before him. Understanding the futility, the protagonist ordered the system to issue his reward. After which, right before the approaching spear, a chest appeared. Not getting the desired result, Ares was greatly struck by such a sharp appeal. As the small chest began to slowly open, Ji-hoon was taken aback by what he found inside. It was a blade of an unusual appearance, a blood-red hue, and upon seeing it, Ji-hoon found himself wondering just what exactly could this be. Without wasting time, the fair-haired one, using the Lord's Eye, decided to find out what this thing was. It turned out to be a weapon of the ES rank, known as the Hellblade, a sword whose magical power was incredibly immense. Astonished by such rarity, the protagonist couldn't understand how it was possible. He also noted how the one who summoned him here, giving him such power, wants the humanity faction to be destroyed. When the blade lightly touched the floor, at first, nothing happened. But a moment later, a loud sound was heard, accompanied by the destruction of the castle. Once in the air, the main character couldn't understand what was happening at all. But then he thought about the immense weight of the sword. so much so that the castle couldn't withstand it. Watching the ground rush closer every second, the protagonist refused to die so easily. Approximately 95 characters. As the boy pondered his fate, he'd already fallen countless meters, approximately 73 characters. But then, to his own surprise, the blonde abruptly stopped approaching his demise. Glistening with cold sweat, Ji-hun was relieved to finally stop. The savior turned out to be Rizzledrake, to whom the young man began to sing praises. People have gathered below, pointing at the main character because he was flying. After a brief pause to collect his thoughts, the blonde man noted how insane his beginning had been. But this made him aware of the difference between his strength and that of the kingdom. Although the young man had only seen one night, he understood that their numbers would only grow. Knowing he needed to save his strength, Ji-hun first decided to flee the kingdom. Returning to the throne room, Ares, gazing at the weapon's edge, trembled as he couldn't accept letting the enemy escape. Cursing himself with every word he knew, he intended to punish himself for his failure. A voice appeared, asking for the knight's attention as he couldn't hold back tears. This same voice explained how His Majesty wants to say something to Ares. Without losing time, the knight, bowing his head, began to apologize to the ruler. Asking the spearman to calm down, Baelish Jordia III noted how the sun was already setting. This means one thing: a monster attack on the kingdom is coming soon. Ares, on the king's orders, was to lead the troops and march to the walls. Returning to the main character, he was still thinking about the game's excessive complexity. But the biggest mistake in the game's balance was the first wave, called Wild Goblin. After all, without starting the game with an S rank that deals area damage, it's nearly impossible to win. These thoughts snapped Ji-hun back as the ground rushed up beneath his feet. Addressing the dragon, the young man tried to hold on to it so they could escape the kingdom. But after a few seconds, the main character looked ahead and got very scared. Thus, a cloud of dust rose in the alley, accompanied by a loud crash that echoed around. Holding his back, Ji-hun noted how easily he had escaped after such a powerful impact. When he stood up, he noticed a nice pair of shoes in front of him. While the boy put on his shoes, a stranger who approached said he'd never seen clothes like that before. The hero himself was, to put it mildly, shocked to see who approached him. And it's all because this was yet another character from the game who possessed an S rank. Saint Knight Lib, turning to the young man, asked him to give his name. The light-haired one thought about how he managed to block the 100th wave that no one could pass. With this character, usually Lib was only used to navigate through the dungeon itself and nothing more. But with the chance discovery of a dragon soul, she became the key to achieving victory. Drawing her blade, the girl once again told the boy to give his name. And when she heard her own name spoken by the fair-haired one, she asked him where it was that he knew her from. The guy shared how he endured hundreds of failures before he could understand a girl's worth. Hearing such oddities from a stranger, Lib tried to figure out what he was saying. Ji-hun understood how the one who had once helped him had now become an obstacle. And to overcome his own path, he would have to get rid of it, the young man concluded. At this moment, the goblin's enraged face expressed an immense desire to destroy humanity. The warriors on the walls could not hide their astonishment and fear. And it's all because a huge horde of monsters launched an attack on the kingdom. Against the goblins climbing the walls, stones were dropped and arrows were fired at them. Realizing the vast number of monsters, people began to understand how long they could last. A sudden warrior reported to the commander that Lord Owen had arrived. Returning to the duo, Lib asked the boy to answer one question: how does he know her at all? And if he doesn't respond, the last word will be hers, concluded the blonde. Ji-hun himself wanted to get rid of the knight as quickly as possible, but that was impossible for him. And in response, the blonde assured the girl that he was a citizen from the 1st District, wanting to help in the war. But after these words, Rizzledrake appeared, shattering the young man's entire perception. Saint Knight Lib, upon seeing the dragon, wondered what the monster was doing there. The protagonist himself, confused, couldn't understand why the dragon had decided to appear right now. Looking at the girl, he understood that in that case, he would have to act. Thinking about the battle, the light-haired one quickly dismissed the idea as he had no chance. Standing behind the boy, she shared that she understands the whole picture. The fair-haired one is an innocent citizen, pursued by the monster that attacked the palace. At that moment, Rizzledrake looked at the girl with the blade questioningly. At one time, the girl blushed at the sight of such a darling creature. Fortunately for the main character and his ally, an explosion rocked the wall. While the girl was distracted, Ji-hun gestured to the dragon, showing it what to do next. And the next moment, the pair took flight, heading beyond the kingdom's borders. Remembering the monster and Citizen Lib, she couldn't find them there anymore. Then, The soldier who ran up was glad to finally find the special knight. Then the same warrior said one word, "Gates," and the girl immediately understood what was happening. While this talk was happening, a crack appeared in the gate, growing bigger by the second. Lib immediately ordered them to drop bows and prepare for close combat, because soon monsters will breach the kingdom's borders. 64 characters. And now a giant has slipped through the goblins, already raising his club. 80 characters. After the first hit, the monster couldn't break through, but many cracks appeared in the gate. After the second blow, the soldiers gathered at the gate saw the bloody club. Lib ordered her people to prepare for the monster attack. A couple of moments later, the owner of the enormous weapon himself appeared. Thus, the battle continued, but now on the territory of the human faction. By this time, a man appeared wielding a fiery spear in his hand. The girl, noticing the Ares, was amazed by how fast he returned to the wall. The yellow-eyed one couldn't believe the gate was broken down while he was gone. Calling his allies useless fools, Ares activated the wall of flame to defend. This caused the place where monsters once stood to be stained a deep red. Looking at the writhing monsters in pain, the spearman told them to cheer him up. The main character, standing on the ledge, noticed how the battle had changed. He thought about how he had faced 100 waves, but now it's the opposite. Now, finding himself on the opposite side, he must destroy the kingdom over 100 waves. In the past, this would have seemed impossible to the main character, something he could never achieve. Right now, Ji-hoon thought that Bayless Jordan III needed to wait. People finished the slaughter with victory, and everyone was very happy. While the blonde man watched the soldiers celebrate, he didn't yet know who was behind him. Looking into the dark void of the forest, Ji-hung guessed that the monster faction was there. Because the kid restarted the game hundreds of times, he now knows the kingdom's tactics like the back of his hand. But where the protagonist is heading is no kingdom. Here, his journey will begin from scratch. As the boy began his journey, he realized he almost forgot something important. It was Rizzledrake, who at that moment was observing something with interest. When the young man looked to see where his ally was looking, he was surprised. The dragon was drawn to the ants carrying food crumbs to their nest. Ji-hoon observed that the more he watched him, the more he seemed to remind him of a cat. But after these thoughts, the protagonist returned to pondering what to do next. Immediately, a system window appeared in front of him with a new task. The boy needed to create a monster faction. A reward awaited for uniting monsters, while the boy could gain a random ability. Approximately 89 characters. The blonde, after reading the text, pondered how to recruit monsters. Approximately 78 characters. Remembering the initial monsters, Ji-hoon understood that they usually appeared around this time, but he still had a question: how to talk to the potential allies he had found. He needs to know the language. At that moment, a dark shadow darted through the forest. The same silhouette covered several meters in moments, appearing before the young man. The stranger, extending his claws before him, commanded the man to die. When the boy had accepted death, it thankfully did not come for him. Looking at the stranger's claws, the protagonist was struck by the abrupt halt in action. Glancing at the stranger, the main character assumed it was a front rabbit. Hearing the boy's words, the girl, pointing to her ears, said she was a fox. When Ji-hoon said he hadn't called the white-haired girl a rabbit, she became even more furious. The main character, after thinking for a while, concluded that he was facing an Arctic fox. The girl wasn't listening anymore. She was more interested in how the blonde smelled. The boy was astonished by the actions of the fox running around him. She noted how the guy looked like a human, but he smelled like a monster instead. After these words, a system window appeared before the main character, with text stating that he had 2 active passive skills. The first passive ability, called Conversation with Monsters, allows you to communicate with monsters. The second passive ability is called Pleasant Monster, and it attracts positive attention from monsters. Now the blonde understood why he understands the blonde, but the girl couldn't grasp what was wrong with him. Showing her claw, the girl asked the main character once more who he was. Not knowing what was happening, Ji-hoon, thinking about his passive skill, noticed the girl's strangeness. The suddenly appearing rope in front of him pulled the boy out of his thoughts. After that, the same rope, reaching its target, turned red like blood. The trio that appeared was thrilled about their capture of the monster. Looking at them, Ji-hoon suspected they were the bandit faction operating beyond the kingdom. The fox, clenching its teeth from overwhelming anger and pain, called the boy a human. She accused him of setting a trap to catch her, claiming he was the blonde one. Then the white-haired girl asked the main character why he was chasing them. The boy, feeling confused, tried to defend himself in front of the fox. At this moment, the short man passed the rope to his hulking ally. And the next moment, the white-haired girl found herself in the air, much to her and the boy's surprise. The thug, pulling the rope, wanted to drag the monster closer to capture it easily. The main character was still in a state of astonishment, as his expression clearly showed. When the girl was at the right distance, a fist was sent flying toward her. But after the blow, something alerted the brute, making him look at the target. And all because the fox managed to dodge the bandit surprisingly. The next moment, the same brute was driven into the ground with one monster strike. The main character, watching this scene, was struck by its overwhelming power. Looking at the fallen, wounded monster, the short man called the fox a waste. And then he began to beat the girl, accompanying every single blow with insults. Seeing the girl being beaten, the main character realized it wasn't right. Clenching his fist in anger, the blonde, already intending to jump into the fray. But suddenly, a shaggy figure appeared and asked if the boy was all right after all. He also noted how badly everything could have ended for him, given that many beast people live here. After that, the thug asked the boy what he was doing here all alone. At this time, the short-statured man continued to beat the fox with his club. Hearing incomprehensible words, which a person will never understand, he raised his weapon to strike. Seeing this from the outside, the main character got incredibly angry. At one point, the shaggy one ordered his ally to stop, because at this rate she would die. The bald man started to apologize, noting how he couldn't hold back again. The shaggy one shared with the light-haired one how his people can be a bit hot-headed. But what interested him more was that the kid had previously spoken to the monster. Then the boy felt a pain in his stomach, which greatly frightened him. But Patlati emphasized how people like the kid would simplify the job. Ji-hoon, trying to stop the bleeding, tried to understand what the bandit was saying. The white-haired girl, watching, couldn't grasp what was happening. The young man felt a terrifying sensation, as if his body were burning from the pain he endured. Hearing the sounds he made, the shaggy one shared how he narrowly missed hitting vital organs. Then he also added that the light-haired one would die in 12 hours. But he has an antidote for such cases, which the protagonist can get for a translation. The same bandit asked the boy where the lair of those monsters was. Seeing the wounded girl's face, the hero didn't know what to say. The bandit, seeing the boy's face, added that he would only survive on one condition, if he revealed where the hideout was. The main character was very unhappy with these survival conditions. The girl understood that if she spoke out, all her kin would be in danger. White-haired, realizing the danger, opened her mouth and stuck out her tongue. But when the beast woman tried to bite, a bouncer's hand was in her mouth. Ji-hoon, watching this, was amazed by the fox's zeal in defending its village. The brute, looking at the monster's enraged face, noted how fittingly they were called savages. The shaggy one also shared how those they catch die within the day. Then a thug's fist flew into the girl's stomach, causing her to start spitting blood. Looking at the helpless, shaggy creature, he noted how these savages don't value their own lives at all. He also ordered his men not to interfere, as he still needed the monster alive. The protagonist was surprised. He thought, even if foxes don't understand speech, they at least sense danger. Not wanting to delay, the same bandit reminded them of the terms of their deal, on which the guy's life depended. Suddenly, the shaggy one asked the main character to relax, which surprised him. He mentioned that his boss needs to find a lost item so that the two of them can survive. In that gaze, Ji-hoon remembered his classmate who wanted to make money off him. But it's just a pathetic lie that holds no value for the poor kid at all. Even in the past, the girl told the bully not to hit the main character. For one reason only, because she could benefit from it. But now, in this role was a bandit, yet the blonde didn't want to die so easily. Wounded in the stomach, he slowly approached the beast woman, asking her to take the people to the village. The bandits watching this scene were astonished that the kid could communicate with the monster. The white-haired girl herself told the young man how over 100 people live in her village. With these words, she asked Ji-hoon across from her if she could trust him. The main character, seeing the fox's face, didn't know what to say to her. Looking away, the blonde-haired man shared how he wasn't on humanity's side. The white-haired one can trust him, but the people behind her are bad. When Ji-hoon looked ahead, he was astonished by something as his expression revealed. At this moment, two red eyes belonging to a dragon appeared above the shaggy one's head. It was Rizeldrake, who, without wasting a second, began to focus his power into a single point. Patlati, seeing the lad's face, asked why he had stopped translating. Rizeldrake, however, did not cherish the creation of the red orb called Dragon's Breath. The bandit himself, looking at the translator's strange face, noticed how he had changed. Suddenly, the short man spotted the dragon, greatly surprised. In the next second, he shouted to his ally, who quickly responded to the call. Looking at the unknown red force, the bandit began to plead for mercy. But no damage was dealt. The pathetic dragon's spit didn't even reach its target. The hero himself was shocked by this outcome, as Rizzledrake was supposed to be salvation. The thug and the short one were just as surprised by this turn of events. As for the little dragon, he couldn't understand what happened to his power. The blonde-haired man now realized that the dragon's breath reload wasn't finished yet. Seeing the earth struck by lightning, he knew this wasn't a full-force attack. Approximately 80 characters. Patlati, reaching for the gun, shared how he never even married. Approximately 66 characters. So it means he's not ready to die yet, he concluded, striking the monster with the club. The next moment, Rizzledrake was sent flying, not of his own volition. After rolling a few feet on the ground, the dragon was defeated with one blow. The bandit couldn't grasp how the monster dared to try and break his head. Not knowing what to do, Krotko suggested catching and selling the creature. Patlati replied to the offer, saying he didn't need anything like that. Heading toward Rizzledrake with his weapon, Patlati intended to destroy him. He was greatly angered by the fact that some pathetic monster dared to attack him. At this time, the main character, baring his teeth, showed his anger. Tom recalled the bandit's words that if he translated, he could survive. Ji-hoon was angry with himself, as even in this world, he struggled to survive in such a pathetic way. He also remembered his father's words, how he had called the fair-haired boy useless. In that very moment, Ji-hoon decided he didn't want to regret anything anymore. Returning to the shaggy one, he had already sent his club into Rizzledrake. As the wounded beast woman tried to stop him with words, a young man walked past her. At that moment, a system window with a passive ability appeared before the blonde. It was called Physical Monster, and with its help, the user's strength surpasses human limits. After that, dust rose near the bandit's hiding place in the distance. Nearby, a white-haired woman couldn't believe what she was witnessing. Even the allies of the shaggy one were, to put it mildly, shocked by the suddenness. And when the dust settled, there he was, the shaggy one who had attacked the little dragon's life. Without hesitation, the duo rushed to aid their ally, forgetting the monster's guard. The girl tried to understand how the blonde, under the influence of poison, managed to pull this off. But what the fox saw with her own eyes next, well, that surprised her even more. It's all because the main character, worried about the monster, asked if it was okay. He then remarked, while examining Rizzledrake, how much he reminded him of someone. The one who was by his side, you know, and gave him strength, who made him smile, his one and only friend, whose name was Ruru. Comparing his new friend to a cat, Ji-hoon vowed to protect him no matter what. Lifting their ally, the duo began threatening the boy with their leader's authority. But in response, the hero just glared at the bandits fiercely. Seeing the expression on the blonde's face, the duo was quite scared. Not wanting to end up as corpses, they decided to flee from the danger ahead. At that moment, Rizzledrake began to growl at the fleeing ones as if nothing had happened. But his roar ended immediately as Ji-hoon, standing behind him, began to fall. After which, the little dragon began to circle the main character, wanting him to wake up. He himself, looking into the filling emptiness in his eyes, couldn't believe his own death. Seeing the face of Rizzledrake, he wondered what would happen next. In that very instant, Ji-hoon remembered moments with his mother. Standing there, the boy couldn't contain his anger because his father hadn't come. When the young man opened his eyes, a small light appeared before him at first. It was a torch. The beast woman, taking over the main character's body, moved through a cave. After a while, the crowd of long-eared ones gathered and discussed something fiercely. They saw a human for the first time, but something was wrong with it, they thought. Noticing how the poison should be neutralized, they were curious when he would wake up. Ji-hoon himself was thinking about how he couldn't get up with everyone staring at him. Fortunately for the fair-haired one, a fox appeared, asking its companions to disperse, because their guest won't be able to relax if there's so much noise around. The protagonist, hearing a familiar voice, immediately knew who it belonged to. The girl who entered assumed the boy had already woken up. With these words, she asked him to understand how, for her kind, he appears as a human being. And they're seeing a person who smells different for the first time, the fox concluded. Then Ji-hoon realized that the effect of the deadly poison had worn off. All the credit went to the monsters, as their village had the antidote that was needed. In that moment, the hero realized how he ended up in the village the girl wanted to protect. Then the main character asked the white-haired girl why she was so wary of him. In response, she reminded him that the kid looked human but smelled different. Remembering the rescue of the red monster, the girl began to trust the blonde even more. As the boy spoke aloud about the ability, the pleasant beastman monster got angry. After that, she asked the main character why he is so irritating after being saved. In response, Ji-hoon bowed his head and thanked them for saving him, which surprised the standing fox instead. Embarrassed, she emphasized how they were even now, since the light-haired one had saved her too. While the girl was chattering, the protagonist's ear caught something familiar. The owner of the joyful sounds turned out to be Rizzledrake, whose name the guy shouted. Hearing the red monster's name, the girl decided to introduce herself too. Noticing they didn't know each other's names, the fox decided to name herself. But then, a rabbit appeared to spite them. She told Riv that the elder was looking for her. Out on the street, Ji-hoon looked around at the surrounding area and felt very happy. This village called Varan was built by beast people who are rabbits, but now it is home to beast people who have lost their villages. Seeing the fox, the rabbits rejoiced at her recovery, but noticed how downcast she appeared. A thug who appeared claimed he'd heard Roya went into the woods. The white-haired woman assured the bull she'd be much more careful. Hearing all the talk about the fox, Ji-hoon noticed how everyone cares for her. He immediately noticed the girl's downcast face and asked why she looked so glum. The blonde, shouting in response, turned to the main character, wanting to know something. Addressing the light-haired boy with a shout, she asked if he had a name. The main character was taken aback for a few seconds by such a question. Introducing himself as Kim Ji-hoon, he also assumed his name was unusual for these parts. But then the girl also introduced herself. Her name was Ria Rindrian Perditi Ceciliad. After that, she turned towards the villager, listening to their joy for her recovery. She crouched down and assured the doe of her good condition after her recovery. Ji-hoon noticed how the fox suddenly brightened up when it introduced itself. He recalled that his primary mission was to unite the monsters into a single faction. But Ria pulled him away from those thoughts, reminding him that they needed to hurry to the elder. The main character couldn't understand why the girl asked his name if she didn't use it when talking to him. Ji-hoon, thinking about the mission, wondered if he could create the monster faction. After a moment, upon reaching the elder, he declared that he was handing the village over to the young boy. The sudden statement drastically changed the expression on the duo's faces. The elder replied to the fox and Ji-hoon, saying how old he was. But the girl wasn't about to give up, to which the former elder replied with a chuckle that the decision had been made. Raya refused to give up at the time, so she dashed off in pursuit. Approximately 68 characters. After a while, the old man shared how he often has strange dreams, and they always come true. Approximately 104 characters, after which he himself, looking at the boy, said that only he could save the village. Thus, a system window appeared before Ji-hoon with a reminder of the main quest to create a faction. At that moment, the boy realized it was somehow linked to his mission. He recalled the words of the shaggy man who spoke of losing his leader. In that very instant, a single thought pierced the protagonist's mind, astonishing him. Thinking of her, the blonde man turned to Ria and asked her about one thing. Specifically, when the girl walked, no one ever followed her at all. In response, she noted that no one had ever found the village of Varan. The reason for this is that beyond the steep rocky mountain lies a wide sea. No one dares to cross the mountain, and on top of that, there's only one way to get to the village. But even if someone found the way, they likely couldn't handle the maze's complex structure. Thus, it's nearly impossible to reach Varan from this world. She also shared that she didn't notice anything strange on the way. But even after these words, the protagonist's uneasy feeling didn't subside. It's no surprise that drops of blood were found in the tunnels, left by Ria's wounds. And yet the main character's feeling turned out to be true for at that moment. The short, familiar man was very happy with his find, which made him laugh. And in the very next moment, a cry was heard, and a man burst into Varan. The bald man on the ground couldn't understand what the monsters around him were saying. The main character guessed that he was following them by the trail of blood. Hearing this, the white-haired woman, amazed, shared how careful she'd always been. Hearing Rin's many apologies, the bull across from her asked the girl to please stop apologizing. He urged her not to blame herself, as it was very difficult to even bring the injured one here. The nearby beastman agreed and began to calm the girl down, reassuring her gently. Ji-hoon, recalling the bandits, asked the intruder where the other two were. In response, the tall man called the beast people brainless and said their village would soon be in flames, because even the kingdom long ago disowned their gang, and their leader is the Screaming All. At one time, the boss was supposed to arrive any minute with 200 men. Hearing about the Screaming All, the main character didn't understand who the tall man was calling that. At this time, the same pair of bandits headed for the cave's secret passage. Entering, the shaggy one greeted the leader, telling him how they had been defeated. He wanted revenge, the bandit concluded, then told how he found the tunnel to the village. After listening to his men, the scarred man praised them for their good work and effort. Then the bearded man shared how to head toward the village right away. Returning to the bald man, he noticed that he wasn't the only one who knew the way here. Returning to the past, the trio of bandits advanced rapidly through the forest. The shaggy one told the bald one it's too early to return to the shelter, because they can seize a good opportunity and get what they want. Recalling that moment, the short man noted how the kid might consider himself a dead man. Listening to the bald man, the surprised Rin wondered what he was talking about. The main character revealed how the bandits found the way to the village and are heading here. Hearing such terrible news, the white-haired woman was scared. Sam Ji-hoon, thinking about the screaming all, began to recall something. In that game, knights gain experience and become stronger by killing attacking monsters. But that's not enough to reflect the endless waves we face. So, there's this mode for leveling up, and it's called Adventure. Certain knights are also chosen to complete the stages there. Upon final completion, players receive a wide variety of items. The adventure itself begins with the first 10 levels called the Graveyard of Wild Goblins, and it ends with the Demon King's Sacred Land. It consists of 100 stages. Ji-hoon didn't recall all the stage names, but he vaguely remembered the final. The name was a location called the Hideout of the Screaming Shovel Gang. Each stage also had its own backstory. This one was connected to Varen. According to the lore, this place was completely destroyed with all its inhabitants. Unexpectedly, the tall man shared that he has a single proposal to make. He will ask the leader to show mercy to the one who will set him free. Hearing these words, Ji-hoon understood how the beastmen didn't grasp them, yet they touched their hearts. In that moment, an echo of fear swept through the gathered crowd around them. Rhea blamed herself, thinking about his words. She felt responsible for Verina's potential destruction. If this continues, everyone will die and Varen will become a bandit haven. Realizing the worst possible outcome, the protagonist decided to prevent it. The same short, stocky man kept threatening the beast folk, demanding his release. The main hero decided that Varen will be the stronghold of his monster faction. After that, a swift blow from the blonde sent the bald man flying. The bull standing nearby was, to put it mildly, surprised by such a sight. In their time, the beast people rabbits took on the same appearance. The protagonist himself said they've had enough of useless chatter. Glancing towards Riv, he suggested that she start fighting against the enemies. After all, they must protect Varen at all costs. Rhea was surprised by these words. The bull, hearing this, replied it was impossible. The village itself was built into the mountain. Due to their weakness, they all took shelter. Mostly women and children live here. Suddenly, the whole assembly burst into laughter. It was the elder who had asked Rhea if she had always been so wise. Since everyone was in one place, he decided to share some news. From this moment on, Ji-hoon becomes the new elder of Verina. By then, a large group of bandits was already approaching the village. Arriving at the tunnel, the Shaggy One explained how they ended up there. The leader, learning the location of the beastman's lair, decided to take it. Having shared this thought with his people, he ordered them to advance. Returning to the village, Ji-hoon and the bull thought about the enemy. About 200 strong. At one time, the beastmen had 3 bulls, including a giant. 2 young deer, lacking strength and eagerness for battle, stand aside. 5 sheep ready for a fight, yet deeply worried about their own lives. 1 fox, Rhea, who was the one that led the main character here, thereby saving his life. Most of all, rabbits in the village, at least 101. Counting all the residents, Ji-hong realized the enemy had the upper hand in numbers. Still, this isn't an ordinary battle. The numbers in it don't matter. Rank and level do. For example, when Rhea was attacked, she took down the bandit with 1 blow. 3 is unlikely, but the white-haired girl could win against 2 alone. Additionally, all of the beastmen possess a unique ability known as the beast form. If everyone had Rhea's level, they would easily be able to achieve victory, the young man concluded. With these thoughts, the protagonist turned to the one who called himself Taver Brimlach, asking how strong their fox was. Ji-hoon himself suggested that the initial task shouldn't be impossible to accomplish. Looking at the girl, waiting for an answer, the boy saw her playing with Rizzledrake, after which the bull shared how Rhea is the strongest warrior in Varen. Even if everyone attacked her, the white-haired girl could prevail. Now the main character realized his hope for victory shattered after Taver's words. He began to realize with difficulty how utterly useless all the beast folk were here. Considering the plan, Rhea assumed the bandits would arrive by sunset. The protagonist, hearing these words from the girl, asked why she thought so. In response, she pointed to the beaten bald man from whom she got this information. Ji-hoon then remembered the robbers talking about the leader's lost item. Reminding the girl of this, he asked her if she knew what it was about. In response, the fox shared how in an ordinary village of beast folk there's nothing of value. The blonde man guessed the bandits just needed an excuse. Approximately 64 characters. Taver Brimlach appeared and said the villagers awaited the elder's orders. Approximately 82 characters. The protagonist herself pondered how they could compensate for the superiority in rank. Their individual traits must be exceptional for this to happen. The strongest in the village is Rhea, but there are other beast folk too. For example, no more than 111 rabbits, who couldn't defeat a fox even together. Not knowing the level difference, Ji-hoon wanted to see the monster's exact stats. Touching on this topic, the blonde with his whole demeanor showed his sharp insight. He remembered the system window and the ability to use the power of the gaze of the master. Thinking about how to activate the boy, he remembered moments from novels where a character simply spoke a word. The boy stared at the system window and shouted just one word. Characteristics, 92 characters. But then nothing desirable appeared, which greatly surprised Ji-hoon. He thought that usually it's enough to just say it, and the ability, like inventory, activates. And in that very instant, before the blonde-haired one, an inventory opened, named the Abyss slot. Upon hearing the name, the main character emphasized that every monster has its own name. Then he, recalling his escape from the castle, realized that in the endless series of events he had missed one small thing, specifically the blood-red blade he found in a random crate that day. Realizing the foolishness of losing it, Ji-hoon began to regret what happened. Next, the boy returned to the question of why the stats window wasn't working. At this moment, the main character has activated a total of 4 passive abilities. The first ability is called the Gaze of the Master, allowing you to view the characteristics of monsters and items. The second skill, Monster Communicator, allows communication with monsters. The third is called Monster Sympathy. It evokes an inexplicable sympathy from monsters. The fourth and final trait, Physical Might, grants the monster strength surpassing human limits. Ria's sudden curiosity snapped the young man out of his thoughts. Just as suddenly, the girl bowed her head and started blaming herself. The fair-haired one shared her desire to protect Varen and its people. Hearing these words, the main character realized that they had no time left at all. And just when Ji-hoon decided to stop fixating, the skill activated unexpectedly. At that very moment, system windows appeared, defining the target and its parameters. He, however, considered that inventory was merely a system function for viewing items he possessed. That's why it worked at the thought of him. But there was one thing. The Gaze of the Master is a skill that allows you to see the characteristics of monsters and items, which turned out to be easier to use. To activate it, simply select a target and think about its characteristics. As for Ria's characteristics, she possessed a B rank and was at the 5th level. This rank represents a good level, which is held by Knights of the middle rank. In addition, the girl possesses the water element, and her characteristics are focused on attack power. But among all the information, Ji-hoon's eyes landed on the beast form skill. Seeing the young man's strange face, the beast woman guessed that it was hard for him to be in the elder's position. At that moment, the hero noticed a heart with the number 40 in the status window. Wanting to know what it was, the blonde poked it without thinking. But then, Ji-hoon, he only saw this sudden, unexpected drop in the reading. And it's all because he poked the white-haired girl right in the nose, which made her angry. Realizing his recklessness, the main character began to apologize to the fox. At one point, Ria lunged at the guy, noting how hard it was for him to believe. In a couple of moments, the fair-haired man asked Taver to bring all the residents. When the bull asked about the elder, he replied that everything was fine, approximately 78 characters. After a while, the gathered beast folk formed themselves into a queue, approximately 72 characters. The last monster turned out to be a ram, which made Ji-hoon happy. Checking the specs on each one is really draining, the kid concluded. The number of Varina turned out to be 114, including him and Rizzledrake. Remembering his little dragon, the protagonist decided to use the Overlord's gaze on him too. For an ES rank monster, a regular attack may have seemed too small, but everything was focused on magical attack and defense. When using the entire magical reserve at once, even after a day, only half has been restored. Knowing this, the protagonist concluded he couldn't use Dragon's Breath in this battle. In addition to this duo, there is Taver Brimlack, who has a C rank and is at level 5. There was also a skill called Beast Form, which, when activated, boosts the character's attributes. The others mostly have an E rating. Now the guy understands why Ria is able to defeat them all. Compared to the D rank Knights of the Kingdom, this is an E rank Knight trainee. E rank isn't even in the ranking system. Even though Ji-hoon didn't know what level the gangsters were, the first 10 stages are C rank. Now that he checked everyone's ranks, the main character understood the situation much better. The monsters are losing not only in numbers, but also in ranks and levels. But for now, they're losing on these points. With this setup, defending Varen won't work. But this is not a game. It could work out, the main character thought, reflecting on his situation. There are too many factors here that the game system can't handle. One day, the light-haired man intended to make changes and achieve victory. Turning to Taver and Ria, the main character decided to finally share the plan with them. After a while, a crowd of armed people appeared near the mountains. The hidden pair of rabbits quickly realized it was a gang of bandits coming for them. Addressing the girl, the boy told her to hurry to the village and report what was happening there. But before the bunny could finish, the tip of a weapon was thrust into his forehead. Watching her brother die instantly, the green-eyed girl was very frightened. The bandit leader knew the monsters knew about their attack. At last, the dying little brother told his sister to flee for her life. And in the next moment, the bunny, holding back tears, dashed to the village. When the bandits were about to run after him, the scarred man stopped them. Pat Lady, confused by the order, asked the leader if he wanted to let the monster go. In response, the man declared he wouldn't let go, but instead instills fear in foes. At this time, the main character was urging on teams number 1 and 2. By this time, the doe had already reached the mountain pass. Drawing the attention of everyone present, the green-eyed woman spoke of the arrival of humans. This loud shout with crucial information resonated throughout the cave. At that very moment, Ji-hoon's hand trembled, realizing the full danger. But still, he remembered how he was the first person to withstand 100 waves. And so he won't let the bandits through his defenses for anything. The hulking figure shared with the boss how they managed to obtain the route. Entering the cave, the gang decided to deal with the village by sunset. At this time, Rhea, along with the main character, watched the invasion. The fox asked the boy if the plan would work, and in response, he noted how crucial the start of the operation was. Studying the map, the same big guy suggested that they would arrive in half an hour. Feeling the grim silence, the shaggy one called the villagers cowards who were hiding. Remembering the shaggy protagonist, he intended to settle the score himself. Suddenly, the bandit heard a strange sound coming from beneath the ground, and in the next second, the ground began to shake beneath the crowd of bandits. Realizing the danger of the situation, the shaggy one told his people to jump aside. But it was already too late, as some of the people had fallen into the trap. The bandits behind couldn't understand what was happening ahead. The shaggy one, looking at the huge abyss, was very scared. The bandits who found themselves in the pit were completely wounded. Their bones were broken. His feet planted firmly on the ground, the shaggy one grew even angrier at the monsters. The leader himself, examining the trap, noted how it was constructed by digging a pit. They are covered from above with wooden planks, and on top, a layer of earth and stones is piled. When a load exceeding a certain weight is applied, for instance, like a crowd of people who find themselves trapped, it will fall down after the support beams break under the weight. The tough guy shared that when they came yesterday, there were no traps at all. And if they've already fallen into one trap, there will be even more ahead. Suddenly, in response, the scarred man called his allies fools. To the surprise of everyone present, he lifted a huge boulder, after which the stone was sent forward with a sharp jerk of the hand. When the boulder touched the ground, the trap was activated immediately. The bearded man shared how this path was artificially created. It was originally a solid stone surface. Even if the monsters dug pits and camouflaged them, the difference can be noticed if you look closely. Now the duo understood everything, and their hearts felt lighter. Approximately 74 characters. The bandits now could tell where traps were or weren't by the gravel amount. Approximately 84 characters. The leader added that these traps only confirm the weakness of these monsters. Next, the bandits decided to continue their advance, leaving a few men behind to pull out those who had fallen. Watching from the side, Rhea immediately understood how the traps were found. But that was part of the plan, the protagonist declared, rejoicing. Drilling the solid stone, even with the beast folk's enhanced strength, took a long time. Perfectly hidden pits were impossible to cover in a short time. And for this, they only have 2 deep traps left, while all the others are fake. This is so that they have enough time to prepare for the next stage. With this thought, Ji-hun noted how the bandits slowed down due to the traps. At this time, many cracks appeared in the rocky mountain. The brute, following the map, explained how by going forward and turning right, they could reach the village. But what the scarred man saw next completely shattered the truth of the brute's words. And it's all because a fork with a whole 3 paths appeared before them. Noticing the familiar weeds, the shaggy one said they needed to go left, not right. The leader noted that the monsters are also savvy to cheap traps and illusions. At that very moment, the bandit boss realized the monsters were buying time, preparing something in the village, meaning they couldn't delay, he concluded. Thus, the mob of people decided to split into 3 detachments and proceed further. Into the left tunnel, a bandit nicknamed Crane was sent. The middle one ended up behind the blonde named Dumper with his men. The leader himself decided to take the farthest right passage. After some time, Jaravel's squad found themselves stuck in a dead end. A light appeared on Dump's side, which his people were very pleased about. Grabbing his weapon, the enforcer told the bandits behind him to get ready. Approximately 86 characters. But a mysterious light from outside was also visible on the bandit boss's path. The man with the scar quickly concluded with a smirk that only the right tunnel was correct. Preparing for the upcoming battle, the leader ordered his men to kill everyone. On another path where Dampa was, he and others charged into the attack. The gang leader and his thugs rushed toward the exit, bathed in bright light. But what the scarred man saw as he stepped out of the cave deeply shocked him. Before them lay a dense forest that felt strikingly familiar, as if they had just seen it not too long ago. The path chosen by the leader led directly to an exit right by the cave they had entered. What about Dampa and his people? Their path turned out to be real, and a small village appeared before them. Stopping, he ordered one ally to return to the fork and inform the others of their plans. In the next moment, the bandits were met with an intriguing sight before their eyes. It was their bald ally, who had been beaten and tied to the trunk of a tree. Without thinking long, the bandits rushed at Cargo. That's the name of this short and stocky man. As he untied his ally, the muscle-bound man asked if everything was all right, curious where the boss was. Looking over the group of newcomers, he asked them why there were so few of them. At this time, the dispatched bandit made his way along the familiar path to the leader and his deputy. Suddenly, the short-haired man noticed the leg that had appeared so unexpectedly. This was Rhea, who managed to send the bandit flying with a single blow. Looking at the defeated bandit, Ji-hun noted that they couldn't reveal their plans yet, because this numerical advantage was gained with great difficulty, using false traps to gain extra time for their strategy and plans. Using primitive traps, they made the enemy underestimate themselves and divide their forces. Upon learning the detachment numbered 60 men, the bald man immediately declared the figure insufficient. Suddenly, one of the bandits shouted that they were surrounded on all sides. Thus, the main character managed to gain a numerical advantage in battle. Then, from the mountain passage, a blonde appeared alongside a fox. Looking at the crowd of monsters, the main character addressed all the squads, after which, by Ji-hoon's order, all the monster forces were directed at the bandits. Dampa, seeing the approaching monsters, ordered his men to kill everyone, approximately 78 characters. Thus, the main character's plan to protect the village began successfully. When the two crowds were at the right distance, Ji-hoon ordered the use of the beast transformation skill. The brute, delivering a heavy blow, was surprised he missed his target entirely. When beastmen transform, they emit a large amount of smoke around them. As soon as the blonde learned about this fact, he immediately decided to use it in battle. To start, the main character decided to create a smokescreen with the beast people. The next target on the list was Taurus, who had already utilized his transformation skill. And so, a colossal silhouette appeared among the bandits, terrifying them all. Throwing a massive boulder, the bull sent the attackers flying. At this time, the rabbit's paws, which had appeared, also intended to contribute to the victory. While two held back the bandit, the other pair rushed towards the man's face. After that, two crushing paws made contact with the bandit's cheeks. In their time, deer would target humans, then charge at them with their antlers. On the other side of the slaughter, a trio fiercely beat a large fur ball. The lamb felt no pain, but it was very scared when they beat it, intending to kill it. There were also loud, displeased cries, and some strange liquid upon contact with the bandits burned them severely. It was Rizzledrake, who was already very tired, using Dragon's Breath, even though he had a weaker version. With a numerical advantage and sudden attacks from the smoke, the monsters gained the upper hand. This plan was sure to lead to victory, but the voice that emerged could change everything drastically. It was an armed short man asking his allies to cover him during the operation. While he's busy shooting rabbit ears, who dares to compete with them? Jin Hung turned into a fox and asked her to take care of that side. The white-haired one needed just a second to vanish and launch an attack. The boy was amazed to see such incredible speed unfold. Meanwhile, the bald man aimed at Rhea, ready to take down each monster. And then the girl saw the tip of a spear approaching in front of her. The girl certainly wasn't planning to accept defeat so easily. Dodging the arrow, the white-haired woman made a swift lunge, closing the distance with her opponent. The brute, having taken the girl's blow, he then asked the monster, "Is that all you've got?" Rhea quickly gathered herself and landed on the ground. In the next instant, a foot was sent flying toward the opponent, striking them squarely in the chin. The blow was so hard it knocked several teeth out of the thug's jaw. 74 characters. Having finished with one, the fox immediately darted towards the next. Then a precise strike sent the bald man to the ground. Thus, he was defeated at last. The tall observer, taken aback by the scene, could hardly believe his own eyes. Standing before the fox, the bald man began to insult the monsters with every word he knew. Rhea, as if understanding, slammed the bald man to the ground with one precise blow. And so, the white-haired woman finished off the trio of bandits in mere moments. Addressing the defeated, She said that monsters should not be underestimated. Dampa, caught in the midst of such a battle, was profoundly struck by the fact that monsters had the right to resist humans. With these thoughts, the brute, clenching his fist in anger, decided to beat them all. Activating the brute skill, he began to grow in size, expanding rapidly. The protagonist on the other side felt a strange sensation wash over him intensely. In the knight's defense, skills are only available to knights of C rank and above. By this time, Damp had completed the skill activation, gaining a powerful boost. Nearby monsters were terrified at the sight of the transformed bandit before them. Suddenly, the monster's tongue appeared behind Damp, shocking him. He was a Tor, and compared to him, the blonde seemed quite insignificant. In the next second, the main character heard a loud sound in the distance. Returning to the crane, he still couldn't figure out how long he had to wait. While waiting for his allies, he was curious why no one was coming back. Suddenly, the shaggy one stood up, restless, pondering how to not worry about the boss. With these thoughts, he decided to head into the tunnel where Dampa had gone. By this time, the first group, which consisted of 60 bandits, had been defeated. Of the monster losses, 23 were seriously wounded and unable to continue fighting, and 42 sustained minor injuries. The main character thought about how, despite the almost double numerical advantage, his side suffered more than half the losses. Nevertheless, the operation was successful. But that's not the end of it, because 2 squads of bandits are still lurking nearby. What's more, the remaining enemies outnumbered them, which was highly displeasing. Now, besides numerical superiority, it's time to increase our power, concluded Ji-hoon, after which the main character called Tar over, who asked what the elder wanted. Then the guy ordered to distribute the pile of weapons to everyone. And in just a moment, the monsters were fully armed with their newly acquired weapons. Without hesitation, the main character activated the Lord's Eye to check the stats. Seeing which, the blonde was greatly pleased as their attack power had increased. By this time, the second group of bandits arrived, delighted with their find. Only the shaggy one was bothered by one question. Why was it so quiet here? In the next moment, a whole clearing of allies' heads appeared before his eyes. Seeing which, the shaggy one was genuinely frightened by such a sight. But as he approached, he realized all those present here were still alive. Advancing further, the bandits noticed a vast number of pits in the ground. In the next moment, armed rabbits appeared from them with the intent to take down the invaders. The leader moved quickly through the tunnels with his crew. The scarred man emphasized that without a map, they'd be lost soon. The next moment, one of the allies said they would soon reach a fork in the road. In a couple of seconds, people realized they had fallen into a pit trap. But to everyone's surprise and joy, they didn't fall into the abyss. Expecting the worst, the bandits couldn't understand why nothing had happened. At that moment, the leader suddenly raised his spear, intending to thrust it down. When the tip finally reached the floor, one truth was revealed. It was stone. Now he realized how the trap was only at the entrance, and everything else wasn't real. He was furious that the monsters dared to play with him like that. With this thought, the gang leader, Screaming All, decided to kill all the monsters in this area. Suddenly, the recently recovered bandit appeared, trying to tell the leader something. The short-haired man ran closer and shared that the middle one was the right tunnel. Returning to the village, the monsters had already dealt with the attacking people. Sam Ji-hoon thought that by breaking just one wall at the fork, they had reopened the path back to the entrance. This gave them more time. Now the monsters only had to hold out one last time. Suddenly, the shaggy one managed to free his mouth and called the opponents fools. It all means nothing because once their boss arrives, it will be the end for everyone. A man named Screaming All operates on a completely different level. After these words, Rhea kicked the bandit in the face, ordering him to shut up. Turning to the elder, the fox shared that they had about 65 beastmen left in total. The remaining bandits numbered around 60, including their leader in that count, even though they lacked stamina due to 2 previous battles with humans. As expected, everyone gained experience along with their levels. Then the main character happily concluded they had grown stronger. After a while, the silhouettes of bandits appeared from the tunnel. Seeing them, Rhea quickly noticed how soon the final battle would begin. And after these words, the leader of the Screaming All appeared with his men. Seeing his brother, the shaggy one rejoiced, for he would now be freed. But the man with the scar, seeing the whole clearing of heads, called them fools. Then he, in turn, asked those people if this was really all they were capable of. In response, the main character noted how everything was in front of him only through strategy. The leader chuckled, looking at the kid, and then emphasized how much bolder he had become. 2 victories, that's glorious, but there won't be a third, concluded the scarred man. In response, the main character said they would see if there would be a win. Suddenly, the light-haired one decided to make his opponent a proposal. Pressing the blade to his neck, Patlati said to Ji-hoon, "Drop your weapons," because he's sure the boss doesn't want his beloved brother to die. The young man thought it looked like something only second-rate villains from movies or comics would do. The crane, sensing the imminent danger to his life, began to plead with his brother for help and salvation. The main character thought it wasn't the time for any principles right now. In the next moment, there was a metallic clink as the gang leader dropped his weapon. Ji-hoon was stunned to see this, as he hadn't expected anything like it at all. Suddenly, to the protagonist's surprise, smirks appeared on the faces of his opponents. At the sight of them, the blonde felt a sudden change in the atmosphere. The screaming shrew boss put his hand on the ground and declared that the monsters would kneel before him. Watching the events unfold, the hero instantly knew what would happen next. The man with the scar used his skill, thereby granting buffs to everyone in his vicinity. Even without seeing their characteristics, the opposing side felt them physically. The protagonist, surprised by this outcome, noted how the opponent's combat readiness had skyrocketed. The boss himself ordered his men to carry out a massacre for fun. Thus began the final battle, whose outcome would decide the fate of the monster village. First, the beast folk resorted to using the beast form skill, thereby creating smoke. Without wasting time, the rabbits began their sudden attack, following the plan. Only when the man was to fall from the wounds, to his surprise, it didn't happen. Showing the dagger, the bandit asked the monsters if they would continue. Looking at the man's terrifying face, the rabbits even dropped their weapons. This was not an isolated case. People on the battlefield became more brutal. Yet among all the chaos, there was a beast man who would not give in to the invaders. And then, to Taver's utter surprise, some strange rope suddenly appeared behind him. In a fleeting moment, the enormous beast man was bound at all his limbs. The people on the other side aimed to hold back the monster with this act. Then the massive body of the Taurus fell to the ground, raising a cloud of dust. Not wanting to lose their chance, the bandits attacked the bull. On the other side of the battle, burning lambs tried to escape attacks. Even Rizzledrake himself wasn't spared. They opened fire on him. The main character, observing the whole scene, thought that with weapons, their chances were slim. But Ji-hoon was more concerned about one question. Where was Rhea now? The fox, at the time, tried with all its might to hold back one of the sides. But as soon as she defeated one bandit, in the next moment, even more appeared. Seeing the girl's face, the main character immediately realized how long she wouldn't last. At that very moment, something familiar flew right next to the boy's face. The same fleeting silhouette, after flying a few meters, crashed into a tree. It turned out to be a female rabbit who could no longer fight. Looking at her, the boy realized they were about to lose, which meant they needed a way out of this situation. And for that, he needs to grab the leader of the enemy crowd, concluded Ji-hoon. At that moment, the screaming pike boss ordered his men to attack. Right then, the main character spotted a bull being beaten by a group of people. While thinking of a plan, the blonde shouted the bull's name to get its attention. Returning to the past, when the beast folk were just preparing for the final battle, the elder examined the Taurus's stats. At the same time, the kid shared how he'd signal the bull when it could use its skill. While the beastman recalled their recent talk, the man beside him told the allies to finish. And after these words, several bandits turned their blades upon the monster's body. But they still couldn't achieve their goal, as Tor had already taken the form of a giant. Rushing forward, the protagonist turned to the bull for help. Ji-hoon has a chance to deal with the leader in 3 minutes, because after that Taurus will return to its original form. Thus, the duo rushed toward the leader of the Screaming Needle, eager to end it all. Only the man with the scar, upon seeing his enemies, didn't even flinch, but instead grinned back. Once at the right distance, the Taurians used their coiled ropes and prepared to strike with precision. Meanwhile, the bandit on the other end of the rope rushed toward the leader. In response, addressing his ally, the man called him a fool and told him to finally let go of the rope. After such a sudden move, the bull decided to strike the opponent himself. After such a powerful attack, a cloud of dust rose around the giant's fist. The leader's voice, when it emerged, noted the monster's large size, but he couldn't see it clearly. In time, the man with the scar, after his words, looked at the monster with a sneer once more. Moving towards the main character, he found himself behind the bandit leader. But suddenly, a giant Taurus rushed at Ji-hoon, which surprised him. Realizing the opponent's speed, the boy's expression changed instantly and dramatically. In moments, the pair hit the ground with a crash that echoed across the battlefield. But that was far from all, as a foot soon flew straight toward Taver's face. The crushing boot of the howling leader managed to drive the monster into the ground. After finishing off one annoying foe, he switched his focus to the next one. The fox, on the other side of the battle, noticed the beating of its comrades. the main character could only see a blurred image in front of him. He recalled how he checked his stats before the battle, and they turned out to be better than Ria's and Tavar's. Additionally, Ji-hoon had a trump card for the worst-case scenario. This was a passive ability of the physical monster, granting the owner strength beyond that of a human. Throwing himself at his opponent, the main character realized that this was his last hope. At that very moment, a system window appeared. When attacking people, all characteristics increase by 200%. This is all the boy has left against the leader of the Screaming All. The white-haired woman was astonished by the main character's fierce enthusiasm. By this time, the recovered Taurus was of the same opinion as the fox. The young guy delivering his blow heard a strange sound like a neck cracking. The leader, taking such damage, stepped back a couple of paces, after which, looking at Ji-hoon, he declared that he would never get a third victory. At the sight of the enemy, the boy, who had just flared up, couldn't believe his eyes. The next second, he took a powerful and unexpected blow to the stomach. After that, the main character fell to the ground, holding his injured body part. He struggled to stay up even in that position and didn't want to fall. Only then did the hand of the gang leader grasp the light-haired head. And then, with one sharp movement, the scarred man slammed Ji-hoon's face into the ground. Dropping to the enemy's level, the leader told the kid to stay put and not get in his way. It was from this place that he wanted to show the destruction of the villagers. Looking at their leaders, both sides ceased their slaughter, directing their gazes to a single point. The wounded Minotaur, struggling to rise from the ground, shouted at the elder. In her time, Ria rushed to the duo, ordering them to release Ji-hoon. But one among the bandits was just waiting for this moment to launch a sudden attack. At that instant, an arrow struck the blonde's leg, lodging deep in the wound. The protagonist, watching this, became very worried about the fox. The beastman then fell to the ground, kicking up dust, never reaching the elder. Glauber, looking at the sky, noted how it was almost sunset, but still the end for the monster. Turning to his men, the boss asked the bandits to listen to his words. He also declared that the war was over, and people were very happy to hear that. But then the man with the scar ordered to burn the whole village so nothing was left. After that, a multitude of quickly made torches rose above the houses, and after a mere few seconds, a fire erupted before Ji-hoon. The whole village was painted bright red. A merciless fire consumed everything. Once wounded in battles long past, the beastmen began to leave their homes behind. The bandits had no intention of stopping. Instead, they kept throwing torches around. The rabbits standing nearby realized with despair that everything was over for them. The leader, still holding the boy, said, "War isn't that simple. The losing side loses everything." Nearby, the bandits who had grabbed the beast folk began to mock him. At this time, even more freed bandits rushed at the Taurus. Their boss, lifting Ji-hoon, declared his family, friends, and life had come to an end. 96 characters. The fox, now holding the arrow, couldn't believe what she saw. 71 characters. Feeling the boy's hands, the leader was amazed by his zeal. The fair-haired man thought about how he couldn't just lose like that. Right then, he remembered his mom when she first brought Ruru home. Recalling his unachieved goal, Ji-hoon clenched his teeth in frustration. Then the boy shouted to everyone that he would never give up. Beast people who recently accepted defeat have regained their senses. The leader asked the blonde what would happen if he didn't surrender. And then, from beneath his woolen cloak, he drew out a small dagger. Turning to the boy, surprised by this turn of events, the boss declared that that was the end of it. Only the main character's further death did not follow. Red blood spilled, and the hand of the leader of the Screaming All was in the air. The scarred man himself couldn't believe such an unexpected outcome. The fair-haired man, looking at his savior, was struck by the unexpectedness. Then he remembered a unique trait of a certain beastly creature he knew. While everyone else could use beast form with mana glasses, Ria couldn't, even when she had enough. After all, if we recall the first meeting of this duo, even on the brink of death, she couldn't use her skill. But now the protagonist sees the awakened lycanthrope before him. Turning to Ji-hoon, the white-haired woman asked him to give her the next command. Back with the leader of the Screaming All, he clutched his remaining hand, screaming in pain. Then the main character, witnessing this scene, ordered the elimination of all the bandits. Hearing the elder's words, the white-haired woman agreed without question. And in the next moment, where the fox had just stood, it was no longer there. Seeing the monster before him, the leader asked how it dared to take his hand. But in response, the beast folk said nothing, and only continued their attack. A second later, the severed head of the Screaming All boss appeared in the air. The brother watching this scene couldn't believe it was all happening for real. In her time, Ria ordered the people to shut their mouths and never open them again. The other bandits fighting were stunned by the boss's unexpected death. After the leader died, all the people's effects vanished, causing recently healed wounds to reappear. A system window appeared unexpectedly. When night falls, the monsters become stronger. Thus, all the beastmen gained a surge of strength and confidence in themselves. The rabbits, having received a boost to their stats, decided to launch an attack. With nightfall, they all became more aggressive toward the humans around them. The bandits, coming to their senses, realized they couldn't win at this rate. The protagonist, watching the monsters' unimaginable fervor, didn't notice the rain had started. People started to run, but the rabbits weren't letting them go easily. The hero thought about how quickly he believed the early mission would be easy. Having moved to the beast folk, they rejoiced greatly in their victory. And so, the very first battle in this world, it concluded with a victory. But oh, at what a cost. Over half the village burned with the beast folk's belongings, and many residents perished, leaving their loved ones wounded by grief. Thinking about it, the protagonist began to blame himself, because if he had tried harder, all of this could have been avoided. Ria, who came up unexpectedly, noted how the kid shouldn't take everything upon himself. The white-haired woman added, emphasizing how everyone has their own abilities. Recalling a recent moment, she concluded that Ji-hoon did everything he could. Hearing these words, the protagonist gained renewed strength. The fox asked the elder across the way to keep looking after Verena. After those words, Ji-hoon's expression changed surprisingly. At the same time, a strange characteristic next to the experience points rose to 51 units. With that, the blonde continued, seeing Ria running away, saying she would help with the cleaning. The protagonist himself mentally thanked the girl for she had given him strength. Nothing has ended. Quite the opposite. This was just the beginning. Suddenly, a system window appeared for the boy, showing the completion of the monster faction task. Looking at the system window with the reward for receiving a random rank, Ji-hoon decided not to repeat past mistakes. A few days later, the villagers slowly began to try and rebuild their village. Approaching Ria addressed the elder, deciding to share how she ended up nearby. She then suggested they have lunch together, which the blonde was happy about. But when Ji-hoon learned it was just another carrot, his expression changed. The fox shared how their carrot field was burned, but they still had reserves. Suddenly, the boy suggested the girl was carnivorous, to which he received a negative response. Looking at the carrot, he emphasized how it was better than nothing at all. After taking a bite, the protagonist inquired about the girl's well-being and her leg. The white-haired woman shared that everything is fine with her. She can now walk. Hearing the fox, Ji-hoon thought about the amazing resilience and recovery of beast folk. It was only thanks to this factor that the settlement could recover so fast. In such a short time, the residents managed to hold funerals for the victims. And with the exception of those bandits who died or escaped, they sentenced 55 prisoners. The gathered crowd of fearsome beast folk wanted revenge for their fallen. But taking the lives of defenseless beings has never been easy. And after long discussions, the monsters, along with Ji-hoon, decided to let them go. But with one big condition, a life or death one for the bandits. Tying people up and throwing them on a raft, the main character wrote on a note that it was the Screaming All Gang, which the kingdom couldn't catch. From the villagers' stories, Ji-hoon heard that various monsters inhabit the sea. If they're lucky, they can avoid them and swim through. Otherwise, they'll end up in the kingdom and face proper punishment. But besides all this news, the main character learned one more interesting thing. The reason the bandits were looking for Lee's lair, and the item their boss was after, the kid accidentally found when he went to Ria's house. Spotting something familiar, the kid, without thinking, activated the Watcher's Eye. It was a rope to which colorful things were tied, which turned out to be reinforcement stones. When the protagonist looked ahead, he saw a table with a green pebble lying on it. Approximately 89 characters. This was truly a genuine B-rank enhancement stone, which is considered quite a rarity. The main character immediately asked the fox why something so valuable was lying in her home. Only after these words, a huge sack filled with something fell to the floor. The contents surprised the protagonist even more. It was a whole bunch of enhancement stones. But upon looking up, he, not quite believing his own eyes, surmised that he must be dreaming right now. He even started shouting loudly because what he saw seemed impossible to him. The ceiling was filled with many bags just like these, full of stones. Not wanting to wait any longer, Ji-hoon dropped them and opened one. Holding such a treasure in his hands, the protagonist wondered how much it was worth. Later, he learned that the fox people have a great love for shiny objects, believing that these items bring good luck. So they have a habit of hiding such things and keeping them at home. When the girl learned the bandits came for her stones, she started blaming herself. Everyone said it was okay, but Ria kept blaming herself, and she tried to throw all the stones into the sea. Still, the hero managed to stop her, assuring her that only those who came for them were to blame. When the blonde said the rather obvious words, Rhea, looking at Ji-hoon, burst into tears, and her heartbeat in the stats window rose to 60 beats per minute. After getting the result, the boy said he would watch over them because they are dangerous. After that, using his skill, he placed the stones into his inventory. After receiving many reinforcement stones, Ji-hong realized his faction needed to grow stronger. By evening, the main character asked Rhea where she had put the bandits' weapons. The duo found themselves in the Beastman's village warehouse. Taking a bag of stones from his inventory, Ji-hoon shared how he intended to test one thing. Taking a dagger and a stone, the fair-haired man added that this thing was his luck. Placing the blue enhancement stone onto his weapon, Ji-hoon shouted out the words, "Weapon skill enhancement." After that, a huge room in the building was bathed in a red glow of light. When the white-haired girl saw what was left of her precious gem, she was shocked. Hearing from the boy that he'd achieved the desired result, she maliciously inquired why they were breaking stones. With recent actions, the protagonist managed to upgrade the dagger to C rank. The chance of a successful upgrade is 70%. For B rank, it's already 55. Without much thought, Ji-hoon decided to keep improving his weapon. The rabbit outside couldn't understand what was happening in the warehouse. 78 characters. Night fell after a while, but the boy kept on making improvements. 78 characters. Even in the morning, the passing beast folk were surprised that their elder was still there. The awakened fox asked Ji-hoon if he was still engaged in that same old business. The blond man replied, sharing how he'd already sparked it for the 2,568th time. Finding himself helpless, he added that he'd even considered throwing the stones into the sea. Rhea, however, missed these words. What angered her was the fact that the young man had broken so many stones. The main character surprisingly shared that the improvement was achieved. Now the Screaming All has a B rank and boasts very impressive characteristics. Not understanding what he meant, Rhea asked the elder what he was talking about. And then, pointing forward, Ji-hoon showed the many weapons he had managed to improve during all this time. Among them was one that managed to reach over 100 improvements. The white-haired woman then shared she saw no difference why the boy sneezed. While the girl dusted off the hammer, its potential owner appeared nearby. It was Taurus, and seeing him, the boy quickly offered to let him try the weapon. In an instant, the bull lifted the heavy hammer with a shout. In response to the foreman's question about using it, he noted it's a bit heavier, but it will suit him. Although the Class C hammer is powerful, it surpasses the B rank in pure attack strength. Seeing the boy's face, Rhea asked why he looked happy at first, then suddenly turned gloomy and dark. It's all because the main character remembered his Crimson Blade, which had an S rank with unimaginable magical power. He sighed heavily and concluded that he wouldn't be able to use it at all without magic. Meanwhile, in the kingdom itself, there were many rumors circulating about a sword. The blue-haired woman asked the knight why the huge hole hadn't been repaired. Turning her gaze, the bespectacled girl felt a sinister aura surrounding her. At that very moment, a loud scream echoed from the depths below. It was an Ares desperately trying to pull the Crimson Blade from the ground. Only when the knight tried to make a lunge did a strange energy form around the sword. Seeing the blonde, he immediately pulled his hands back, not wanting to touch. The people nearby talked about how even the respected Lady Ares couldn't pull out the sword. So, returning to our main protagonist, he was then issued a brand new primary quest. He was supposed to recruit a whole 1,000 members into his faction. A system window appeared, allowing the young man to create a group which felt very familiar. Without hesitation, the hero rushed forward, shouting it was time to take on the monsters. Hearing the offer to participate, Taver declined, as he preferred to stay in the village. The hero, hearing this, immediately changed his mind about taking the bull, because if Varen is destroyed by enemies before the main forces are in place, unlike in games, in reality there are many moments that are also worth considering. Nevertheless, for the synergy effect, it would be good to fill all 4 slots, concluded Ji-hoon. Leaving Taurus in the village, the protagonist wondered who to take. But when he looked at the villagers, the boy had a question about whom to take. Considering his decision on who to bring, the protagonist called out to Taver. After that, he whispered a request, and the bull was more than happy to help. Besides the familiar duo, there are 77 beast folk living in the village. But you can't take just anyone on a trip, concluded the light-haired one. After some time, finding himself at the prepared table, Ji-hoon wanted to see all the residents and their characteristics. The bull, addressing the gathered crowd, said that the strongest would get a chance to enter the expedition's top 4. And then he himself added, saying that numbers 1 through 4 should step forward. The protagonist, seated, shared that the criteria are a strong spirit, willpower, and a willingness to take risks. The very first suspect, faced with the elder, faltered considerably. After which, becoming worried, he stated that he wanted to stay in Vorin, to which the young man remarked that everyone has their own choice. When it came to the next beast folk of the quartet, they began listing their reasons to stay in the village as well. After hearing all answers, the main character, getting attention, called Taver. Next, Ji-hoon whispered to the beastman again what he needed to do. Immediately, the bull shared with the crowd, only those wishing to join the group may remain. After these words, many beast folk headed for the exit, unwilling to join the expedition. Turning to the elder, the bull noticed he only took those who wanted to join. Then he told the first candidate to go in for the assessment quickly. Facing Ji-hoon, the rabbit began to stutter heavily, frightened of something. The white-haired woman was shocked to see her familiar beastman and his plight. Pulling herself together, the doe introduced herself to Rain and added that she could cook, do laundry, go on reconnaissance, and carry things. Raya said she wanted it without thinking. The main character paused. While examining the stats window, the boy noticed the D rank, which is good for Varen's level. Looking at the stat screen, Ji-hoon was astonished, as all the experience gained from battles had gone into luck. When the girl declared she was ready to give her life for the cause, the blonde called the next one. Rain felt defeated by such a failure. She didn't expect an instant rejection like this, but then Taver shared that they had no one left willing to join the event. Thus, the team of the main character ended up consisting of just 3 members. Wanting to start his journey, Ji-hoon decided to find the lizard beastman. Only the rabbit, hearing the mention of lizards, was very surprised. At that moment, Rain realized that when she was feeling very anxious, Tar had shared the details of the expedition. Just before the candidates were reviewed, the village's top 3 discussed where the formed squad should go. With this thought, they went to the former elder, who was still sleeping from the last battle. Breathing heavily, the boy shared how he wanted to learn about the nearby tribes. Raya recounted how all the nearby monsters had been destroyed due to frequent human raids. The girl suggested that there might be small shelters like Vareen out there somewhere, but Ji-hoon wasn't satisfied with them, as powerful monsters were needed to breach a human camp. Suddenly, Tor revealed that there is a tribe that has never submitted to humans. But they're too independent and won't form an alliance, so the young man became interested. And the Minotaur added that this is a tribe of lizard folk living north of Varen. Their tribe lives deep in the swamps. They are the strongest race around, because even monsters fear them and avoid the lands of the lizard folk. The main hero reflected on how, even without words, it was all clear to him. Out of 100 invasion waves, they appear in the early 30s incredibly strong. For the monsters up to the 30th wave, they are like real bosses. But this also applies to people. Only 2 weeks have passed since the first wave. Right now, at this early stage, the level 30 wave monsters are very dangerous to people. Considering all this, the boy, not wanting to delay, asked Tavar where the lizards live. The bull, having drawn a map, shared how to cross 3 mountains and a river. When the assembled group set out, Ji-hoon noted the weight of the long journey ahead of them. Sticking to her traditions, Rhea managed to find a D-rank enhancement stone. At this time, Rain couldn't believe she was going on an expedition with the new elder and Riai. Considering such good fortune, the doe decided to appear very useful to her allies. Hearing the boys question out loud about when the first mountain would appear, Rain's eyes lit up. To find the answer to this question, she started searching her intel journal. But she's already been overtaken. It's Drake who took to the air, wanting to help. Rhea turned her attention to the rabbit and told her to hang on, as it would get easier after the first hill. The green-eyed woman was not about to give up so easily. Instead, she felt even more determined to prove her worth. As she made her way along the winding path, she was sure she would get such a chance. Seeing the blocked path, Ryan again thought about how the rabbit race's signature move could be shown. Wanting to rush forward, she mentally told her allies that she would show them her importance in the group. Before she could transform into her animal form, she saw only a flying cobblestone. The main character noted how the fox's level rose after the fight with the boss. Noticing Rain's beast form, the white-haired woman asked her why she had activated it. Then, turning all of their attention to the doe, the pair urged her to hurry along. After that, the green-eyed one thought about how she shouldn't rush to tackle the problem at hand. Suddenly, the doe's ears twitched wildly, catching a distant sound, approximately 74 characters. She warned her allies of the thunderous footsteps drawing near, approximately 66 characters. Noticing the silence, Rhea told the boy how Rain has an exceptional sense of hearing by the standards of the rabbit folk. Hearing this, the protagonist, glancing at the green-eyed girl, remembered something. She was the very girl who ran in with the report about the approaching bandits. In her time, the rabbit closed her eyes and focused on the distant hum. A multitude of rat-like paws scurried across the terrain toward one point. Knowing who the sources of the sound were, the green-eyed one revealed they were rat people. But the most important thing was that there were so many of them. It was a whole flock. Wanting to know where the crowd was going, Rain moved closer to the cliff edge. The rabbit, ears perked up, quickly realized a whole swarm of rats was approaching. They are heading toward a human settlement, or more precisely, toward the kingdom. Looking far ahead, Ji-hoon noted their strange movement. Usually, their settlements are scattered in the forest. At one time, Rain shared how rat people typically rarely leave their territories. But now they seem to be gathering at one point, which means something significant is happening. Then the main character said they needed to go after the crowd. To move forward, the light-haired one decided to seek help from Rizzledrake. Seeing the pair already preparing to rush forward, the rabbit explained that she wouldn't be able to move quickly with her load. While the hero thought, the green-eyed girl realized again how much she bothered him. Returning, Ji-hoon asked the rabbit to remove her backpack and pointed his hand. Using the inventory skill, all items vanished surprisingly. 68 characters. Thus, the Rain backpack was counted as an item, finding itself in the boy's space. Then, glancing towards the ratmen advancing on the kingdom, Ji-hoon decided not to delay. And in the next second, the main character's group jumped off the high cliff. At that time, in the heart of the kingdom, a bell rang out, warning of danger. Ordinary residents, frightened by such news, remembered the recent attack. Ares, charging forward with the other knights, was urging his own men on. People, seeing their defenders, began to cheer them on, asking them to return victorious. The little girl asked her mom why they were being attacked, to which she replied that you can't reason with monsters. On top of that, they are vicious and merciless, so to survive, humans must become stronger. Seeing this scene, the holy knight Lib pondered over those words deeply. Returning to the main character's group, they continued their rapid journey. Seeing his companion's face, Ji-hoon realized the other was at his limit. Apologizing for his weight, the boy asked the dragon to descend smoothly. But in the next moment, Rizzledrake relaxed all his muscles, leaving the boy astonished. The duo on the ground, having lost their allies, began to feel anxious and worried. The main hero and the little dragons have landed, kicking up dust around them. Shielding from the blow, Ji-hoon asked if Rizzledrake was all right after the hit. In response, he just flashed a cheerful grin, letting the boy relax. 90 characters. As he stood up, the blonde wondered where they'd even ended up. 70 characters. When the dust settled, the boy saw something truly remarkable ahead. The allies were curious if the boy and the little dragon were all right. Standing nearby, seeing Ji-hoon's strange expression, they became curious about what had happened. And there lay a vast number of rat people corpses, which greatly shocked them all. As they gazed out at the area stretching out before them, they couldn't help but wonder what had actually happened here. Most of them were killed by something sharp. All the wounds are cuts and punctures. Looking at such a truly horrifying scene, the main character realized, as fate had once again decreed that he should see such a vast number of corpses. In that very moment, Ji-hoon remembered the first day he arrived in this world. From that moment, the boy noticed how, looking at the corpses, he felt nothing inside, as if it had become normal. Rain saw the whole scene and instantly knew the stomping came from this spot. Next, the rabbit heard the sounds of pain from the surviving rat man. Without losing time, the pair of beast folk rushed to help their comrade. After receiving first aid, the same rat person thanked his rescuers. Providing what was needed, Rhea quickly asked the monster what happened here. With great effort, the little rat lifted its head to speak and saw a boy in front of it. In that instant, a familiar face flashed in its mind, bringing back memories of a person. Desperate to save its life, the rat man lunged at the boy, determined to end it all. Feeling restrained, the monster asked his kin why they were stopping him from attacking. In response, the fox told the rescued one to take a closer look. Then he realized that the boy in front of him looked like a human, but felt like a monster. The protagonist shared that he and his group were tracking monsters. And then Ji-hoon asked the rat man across from him what had happened here. Remembering the recent slaughter, the ratling began to recount a tale of a knight. They were all defeated by the little humans, true royal knights of great renown. As they approached the castle, the crowd of rat folk stumbled upon armored foes. The main human among them ordered an attack at that very moment. Then a fierce battle began between the monsters and the people. Only these royal knights, possessing immense power, began to slaughter everyone in sight. At that time, deep thuds were heard somewhere in the middle of a vast field. The chief rat shared with his brethren how, by this hour, 8 villages had already been destroyed. Archers appeared on the fortress walls, aiming their arrows at the enemy. Ares, unwilling to wait, told the monsters to approach faster for their execution. Returning to the rat leader, he declared that today they would avenge the fallen. A large crowd of monsters waited for the attack order, and people awaited enemies. Ratman in a cloak shared how it all started with a man with a ring in his lip. This is the man in armor, and he was the cause of the massacre of his own kind. This terrible battle between monsters and people was only good for one thing. A man with a ring in his lip wanted to obtain a certain purple stone. Hearing this, the protagonist immediately understood that this thing was an S-rank stone. Looking at the sky, the blonde noted the sun dipping towards the horizon. On the other side of the kingdom's walls, a vast army of monsters burned with fury. The rat leader ordered an attack, no longer willing to stand still. Thus, the battle between humans and monsters began in earnest that day. A devastating hail of arrows rained down on the fleeing ratmen below. A pile of corpses began to form before the walls, but the monsters didn't stop. Suddenly, the familiar spear belonging to the Ares glowed with fire. After that, the firewall skill was activated, which takes the form of a beam. Seeing his losses, the rat leader wanted to take revenge on the humans one last time. Having moved into the past, the ratman in a cloak, bearing unimaginable wounds, wanted to stop the knight. Only they just took off, as if they didn't care about him at all. For those who got what they wanted, they were expendable. The knights considered them insignificantly weak. Hearing such a tale from the monster, the hero saw himself reflected in it. 76 characters. When the boy was young, many sought to exploit his vulnerable position. 75 characters. They, even after benefiting, shared as soon as they used Ji-hoon and nothing more. And after all that, no one was found who wanted to help him. His classmates, on the contrary, tried to avoid the kid. Recalling her past as a blonde, she concluded that every person only thinks of their own benefit. The battle at the walls continued. The monsters suffered heavy losses. Around this time, a ratman fled amidst the corpses of his brethren. It was a rat leader who decided to use the pile of bodies. Lib, standing on the wall, watched the monster, waiting for the battle to end. The wounded rat leader himself decided to turn all his and his brethren's pain into fury. By activating the strange ability of the monster's last wish, it aimed to leave a mark in people's memories. Seeing the monster's strange actions, the blonde immediately understood what it was up to. Realizing an explosion would happen, the warriors began fleeing the walls. By this time, the ratman's body swelled with overflowing energy and power. In the end, the leader spoke a few words, doing so in the name of peace. In her time, the holy knight Lib unsheathed her blade, intending to make use of her remarkable skill. And in the next moment, a single, well-aimed strike landed on the monster's body. It was the sword of the holy knight who mastered the dance of the holy blade. 80 characters. Realizing his grim fate, the ratman couldn't hold back his resentment any longer. Then, right before the royal walls, a massive explosion thundered, which was heard even by the quartet located far from that territory. The main character himself shared with his allies that it was the monster's self-sacrifice. The nearby rat pup in the cloak also understood what had happened at the kingdom's walls. The boy thought about how this was the worst enemy on the 6th wave. But if the break-in was successful, at most he would have broken the wall. That ratman was aware of his impending death, yet he still took such a desperate step. It's all because he wanted to show the long-held pain in the hearts of the monsters. At that moment, the blonde recalled the start of the battle for Varen. Tower later explained why there were no beastmen men in the village, only children and women. It all happened because they set out to take revenge on the kingdom. The boy remembered how the king, addressing him, asked him to become a legendary knight. He just needed to listen to his kin and the king's orders. If Ji-hoon had agreed back then, he would have either cut ties or defended those involved. Reflecting on this, the protagonist noticed a sense of relief wash over him. Even though the main character switched sides, he's still human, like everyone else. That's why he's also looking for personal gain, which is to receive a reward after defeating the human faction. It's for this one reason alone that the protagonist acts, he concluded. After these thoughts, the blonde decided to explain why he's looking for lizards. He needs them to build up his forces, the main character added. Then he also noted how all the waves against the kingdom were just pointless bloodshed, and if nothing changes, the slaughter won't end until all the monsters are destroyed. Ji-hoon's goal, before the last monster vanishes, is to destroy the kingdom, as he declared to his companions. To achieve this, he needs their strength, the protagonist stated, gazing at his allies. After such words, the light-haired man pondered how they would react to what he said. Suddenly, Rhea spoke up, sharing how the boy's hatred for people was no weaker than theirs. The fox remembered the elder's words. Finding himself in a hopeless situation, he refused to give up. Then he remembered how the boy decided to go after the lizards, wanting to join them. In the main character's face, as he spoke his words, she saw nothing but sincerity and truth. Everyone in Verena lost their families due to humans and their bloodthirst for monsters. And in that recent slaughter in the village territory, many also perished. But in the end, it all came down to one factor: the helplessness of the monsters. Despite his limited strength, the fair-haired man decided to lead them to victory, thereby saving Varen. And if the path to peace for monsters is destroying the kingdom, she happily decided to stay with Ji-hoon, the fox said with complete seriousness. After such warm words, the nearby rabbit also felt she should say something. With a trembling hand, Rhine revealed she would stay with the elder. She also added how her parents died at people's hands protecting her and her brother, but her brother also died. Though rabbit beastmen are the weakest, she believed the world was like that. But still, her opinion on this changed after the appearance of the elder. It was when Ji-hoon knocked the leader of the mob down with one crushing blow, and in that very instant, Rain decided for herself she would follow the elder. After his speech, the green-eyed girl shyly said she was of little use to everyone. In response, the protagonist thanked the female rabbit, which surprised her. Sam Ji-hoon thought how their reasons differed, but the goal was the same, and that was more than enough. Next, he also noted the utter pointlessness of monsters fighting humans. The protagonist intended to break the monsters' eternal chain of defeats. With the victory achieved, they will finally find the peace they seek. Suddenly, a chorus of voices arose, eager to follow the young rogue. Approximately 75 characters, the surviving rats with their last strength, rose to take revenge on humans. After that, the rat people who managed to keep living began to gather one by one. Later, the main character learned they had secretly followed and eavesdropped on him. And then a huge rat appeared, and seeing its size, Ji-hoon was utterly astonished. Without wasting time, the doe, using her methods, began to provide assistance. After some time, all the survivors were healed, and it was decided to cremate the deceased. At this time, the kingdoms, having survived the 6th wave, were dealing with the dead. Time is almost up, and while the kingdom is still weak, the boy wanted to deal with it. The next day, the protagonist handed over the map, telling the rat in the cloak to follow it and meet Tora. Ji-hoon's group left the rat people and went on to find the lizard people. The rat man saw the map and was amazed by how detailed it was, to say the least. The boy started collecting monsters and had gathered 149. As soon as they said goodbye to the rat people, they headed for the swamps, to where the lizard tribe lives. Standing before the river, the boy wanted to take advantage of Rizzledrake's help, but he slept, so the main character, believing in his own strength, decided to cross the water. The group of boys strayed from the right path, making their journey more dangerous. But thanks to this, Ji-hoon's group was able to stumble upon goblins. Handing over the map, the boy tried to explain to the monsters where to go. After that, the young man added 40 monsters to his faction. As he moved further along, the main character encountered the kin of Tower, which brought them joy. Then, in the system window, 201 appeared next to the gathering of allies. But that wasn't all, because Ji-hoon's group stumbled upon monsters again. They turned out to be slugs, the attacking monsters from the 7th wave. Standing before the Slug King, the young boy tried to stop them. Realizing no one was listening, Ji-hoon said if the monsters advanced, they'd be killed. The reason the slugs attacked people was that they were driven out of the caves by the river. Because of this, many had to leave in search of a new place, but the path they chose led to the kingdom. Determined to gain new strength, Ji-hoon drew a map and told the slugs to follow it. And so, with just one conversation, the young man managed to acquire 793 monsters. After such a long journey, the sun was setting, and the boy was already exhausted from the trek. Suddenly, ahead, Rain noticed something intriguing in the distance. These were the very 2 peaks where the lizards they were looking for lived. Looking at them, the protagonist noticed how little time they had left. Only after his own stomach rumbled did Ji-hoon decide to take a break. Seating himself, he took his backpack from inventory, and Rhine saw a chance to be useful. Searching the items, she hoped to find supplies from Varen for everyone to eat. Only the boy expressed his dissatisfaction at the mention of carrots from Rhea. The fair-haired man, holding a vegetable, wondered if there was anything else in the forest. Hearing these words, the green-eyed girl reached out and shared how she had gathered some food along the way. As soon as the main character looked, he knew it was raspberry, which he, not wanting to hesitate, decided to taste, as after the carrot he craved something new. Feeling the great taste, Ji-hoon shared how he hadn't eaten anything so fresh and sweet in a long time. The fox, however, said that this was nothing new to her, as she had come from a village compared to the young man. Next, the rabbit, taking out a frying pan, noted that if Ji-hoon didn't like the food, maybe they'll try cooking something, Rain suggested. The guy was happy about that. After a while, the food cooked over the fire was finally ready to be eaten and enjoyed. The blonde, catching the scent, immediately compared it to the smell of soybean paste soup. The green-eyed girl, in turn, explained that for her, cooking is a hobby where she often experiments. The main character didn't let the dough finish. He shouted at her, looking at something enormous behind him. Rain couldn't contain his astonishment. The stranger then remarked how delicious it smelled here. 66 characters. 2 enormous ogres had arrived, drawn by the strong smell of the soup being cooked. Seeing the huge green brutes, the rabbit couldn't contain her astonishment at all. When a large hand reached out, Rain, very scared, covered herself with her arms. Only the fence's end was pointed not at the beast man, but at the carrot. The boy quickly noticed many wounds all over the monster's body, which shocked him. The green brutes, smelling the carrot, realized it wasn't that which smelled so good. Then, one of the 2 of them happened to catch sight of a pot, and he suggested that the smell was coming from it. The ogre, head bent over the soup, immediately smelled its deliciousness. Determined to give it a try, the green giant, unaware of the high temperature, grabbed the pot with both hands, and a second later, the ogre threw the hot soup to the ground, burning his hands. Watching this scene, I thought how I knew these monsters weren't gifted with great intelligence, but I was curious how they survived. Then, when one green giant felt pain, the other decided it was time to eat. The main character, without wasting time, decided to activate the Lord's Eye. It turned out that this duo possessed a B rank and had levels that were quite impressive. Back to the hungry ogre, it grabbed the soup, not learning from its brother's mistake. At that time, someone else in the forest heard the ogre's cries of pain. Then the collected apple crates ended up on the ground, causing the fruit to spill. The stranger, however, headed towards the kid and the green brute. As the blonde tried to gain the monster's trust, Rhea felt a thirst for blood rising within her. In the next moment, the fox took the blow, trying to save the village elder from harm. Using her claws, Rhea blocked the strike and demanded the stranger's identity. The protagonist, seeing the guest's ears, instantly knew which race he belonged to, approximately 90 characters. It turned out to be a dark elf, which left Ji-hoon quite astonished indeed. The green-eyed one wasted no time, bypassing the bothersome fox with a single leap. Then the long-eared one whispered just 2 words, "Chains of Darkness." Looking at the stranger who had just defended her, Rhea asked what he was doing, after which the white-haired woman felt a strange sensation. Her body stopped moving. Returning to the elf, he had already aimed his dagger straight at the hero's throat. As he watched the approaching danger, Ji-hoon was genuinely frightened. Summoning his weapon from the inventory, the boy prepared to face the deadly blow. Upon seeing the strange blade, the elf noted the colossal amount of mana. Next, the light-haired one asked the stranger why he attacked, but he was also curious why the kid attacked the ogres. Hearing the question, the protagonist couldn't understand the elf. In the next moment, the long-eared one struck, thereby exposing his opponent's weakness. Watching the stranger's actions, Ji-hoon immediately understood that he intended to deliver a chopping blow. And after these thoughts, a skill called Shadow Rend was directed at the young man. But at that moment, someone else in the forest was intrigued by the surge of energy. Moving closer to the duo, a massive crack in the boulder loomed behind the main character. Surprised by the lad's evasion, the elf surmised he knew about his blind spot. Once they were at a distance, the 2 of them again asked each other why they had attacked. Upon hearing about his attack on the ogres, Ji-hoon was, to put it mildly, surprised. At that moment, the main character remembered many wounds on the monsters' bodies. Then the elf, noticing the ogre's flushed hands, asked the boy if he really thought he was blind. The young man tried to explain to the stranger that he hadn't done anything. Only when Longears heard of the ogre's stupidity did he get angry. Realizing that a simple agreement wouldn't work, Ji-hoon decided to ask the victim. Hearing the ogre's words of his innocence in the wounds, the boy awaited the elf's reaction. The long-eared one asked the thugs if they had hurt them, to which they answered yes. The long-eared one declared that using the ogre's low intellect was unacceptable. When the hero tried to justify himself, the elf refused to listen to his words. But Ji-hoon also did not want to be defeated by some unfamiliar opponent. Using the dark energy trapped within the blade, the young man attacked his foe. Having reached his goal, he once again declared his innocence. 78 characters. Suddenly, the boy felt a strange sensation. He knew he'd dealt critical damage. 90 characters. The elf, having shed his blood, realized that his opponent was stronger than he had thought. While the long-eared one decided to give it his all, the fox standing nearby wanted to rush to the elder. Only that strange feeling hadn't disappeared anywhere. Rhea still couldn't move. The elf touched the opponent's shoulder and cast the same effect on him. Then the long-eared one threatened the fox, saying if she moved, the little one would die. Even if someone is at fault, the elves still give a second chance. That was the law, the green-eyed one declared. While the long-eared one sought an apology for the ogres, the light-haired one did not wait. Looking at the uncomprehending face, the protagonist once again declared his innocence. And in the next moment, a blow from the hilt of a dagger struck the stranger on the head. The two ogres, worried about the elf, noted Leo's defeat against a strong foe. Leo himself couldn't believe that his power had no effect on the young boy. Struggling to recover, he guessed, hardly believing himself, that the other was stronger. Hesitating to agree with his own thoughts, the elf clenched his jaw in overwhelming anger. Only when the long-eared one tried to lunge did a hand already seize his own. It was Rhea who ordered the stranger attacking them to stay still. The main character pondered how the Chains of Darkness was an overpowered skill that restrained lower-ranked opponents. However, against a target of equal or higher rank, the chances of success dropped sharply. The elf also examined all the members of the group and then chose the young man as his target, checking his attributes. As for the main character's stats, all the experience gained from battles was allocated to critical hit chance and its damage. But what struck them most was that the light-haired one had neither rank nor insignia. At least Ji-hoon managed to avoid the worst-case scenario for himself and his allies. Using the Lord's gaze, Ji-hoon discovered that the elf possessed an A-rank status and was at the impressive 17th level. Then the fox asked the boy how he planned to handle the situation ahead. At this time, Leo thought about how he had set out on a journey to return the greatest warrior. Reflecting on his loss, he realized that this was indeed his true level of skill. As the elf recalled his father, the sharp tip of a blade appeared before him. He ordered the white-haired one to remove the shackles, surprising the fox. Reaching out, Ji-hoon asked the elf to trust them, as they really didn't hurt the ogres. Next, the kid suggested the green-eyed one find those who left scars on the thugs' bodies. In that moment, noticing the stats of the long-eared boy, he saw an increase in one of the values. Suddenly, another stranger in armor appeared and shared his joy at finding monsters nearby. Hearing a person, the main character, surprised, quickly looked at the sound's source. The gleaming eyes declared there was nowhere left for the giant to flee. This man turned out to be the very knight with the silver ring in his lip, about which the rat man in the cloak spoke, having suffered defeat with his brethren. At that moment, the protagonist recalled the description of the knight's monstrous power, and also how this person defeated a crowd of rat people for a single S-rank stone. Realizing all this, the blonde man wasted no time and activated the ruler's gaze. Even though the kid couldn't see people's stats, he could imagine approximate ones. Then Ji-hoon quickly spotted 3 stars on the knight's armor with a silver ring. So he was one of the A-rank knights, but the kid doesn't remember him, which means he's not one of the key characters. The warrior himself noticed a strange group made up of different races. Glancing aside, the bearded man noticed something curious. Noting the dark skin and long ears, he immediately understood that he was facing a dark elf. The knight was delighted by this turn of events. He was very pleased with today's haul. Then the main character asked the man if he had destroyed the rat folk village. Hearing the conversation between these two, the elf wondered if the lad was truly communicating with a human. The blonde-haired man, having received a positive answer, then asked, "Did the knight wound the ogres?" Didn't expect that question. The green-eyed one was surprised, but still found the man's answer interesting. In response, the knight declared that he had come here to kill everyone present. After these words, the elf saw his mistake and asked the boy for forgiveness. Even though he doesn't understand, the man's words make it clear who's to blame. And in the next second, the green-eyed one lunged at his opponent, wanting to finish him. In an instant, the blade of the long-eared elf met the armor of the man before him. The young lad immediately realized the elf aimed to use his skill, but it wouldn't work. And it's all because the difference in equipment between this duo is quite enormous. Having taken the elf's attack, the knight called the opponent's weapon a toy. But then the green-eyed one, not wanting to talk to the knight, vanished from his sight. Knowing the armor couldn't be pierced, he decided to attack the exposed body parts by surprise. Only the knight with the silver ring didn't plan to lose. For a brief moment, the fist crossed a short distance and struck its target with force. The power of this attack was so great, it lifted the long-eared one into the air. After which, the green-eyed one, with a cry, aimed his blade at his opponent. And so the elf's sword lunged towards the chest of the armored opponent. The sight caused the expressions of those nearby to shift in surprise. In the next moment, the long-eared one's sharp weapon shattered into pieces. The green-eyed man was greatly surprised, as he was confident in this attack. The knight didn't dare wait for his opponent. which is why he drove him into the ground. Realizing he'd gone too far, he noted how easily the goods could break, approximately 74 characters. Hearing that last word, the protagonist froze, wondering if he'd misheard. Was it really said right? Approximately 104 characters. Returning to the long-eared one, he, feeling immense pain, tried to regain his senses, but the knight's leg with its silver ring suddenly appeared and knocked him down again. By calling the elf a commodity, he noted that an ogre is also one of those things. Spotting a fox, the man emphasized how it too could make for a good commodity. Next, he said that although he didn't know what they were doing here, the young man, as a citizen of the kingdom, should be aware of how popular monster shows are. Seeing the uncomprehending face, the warrior noted how people like anything that sparks curiosity. But he was more shocked the protagonist knew nothing of the monster show. In the next moment, he realized who stood before him, despite the man's disguise. Touching the silver ring in his lip, the bearded man laughed, feeling quite lucky. If he catches a true legendary hero, he stands to earn a great deal of money. Listing each person present, the knight began to think about how he would get rich. Wanting to capture everyone, he declared he could bring them to the kingdom. And then the two blades crossed each other, producing a loud sound of metal. The knight examined the hero's blade and guessed it was worth a fortune. Ji-hoon himself wanted to know from his opponent if the warrior acted on the king's orders. The man with the silver ring in his lip replied that royal decrees are not up for discussion. The young man shared how his life would be easier, thinking that people are the villains of this world. Hearing these words, the warrior noted that this reply was just right for a traitor. But the next moment, he caught the attack of a suddenly appearing opponent with his hand. The long-eared one, seeing this, was, to say the least, surprised by this turn. Ji-hoon himself was thinking about how he could contribute more to the victory to gain experience. Realizing he had to fight, the young man turned to Rizzledrake, asking him to prepare a skill. Looking at his cut hand, the knight with the silver ring grew angry at the monsters. And then, using his ability, he covered the exposed part of his body with stones and earth. Upon witnessing this, the protagonist realized the opponent wielded the earth element. A huge lump of stone and dirt formed on his arm. The man wanted to ask the light moist one. Does he know how much his armor cost? The knight concluded, landing a blow on the fox. And in the next moment, a loud sound echoed through the entire forest. Observing the enemy's strength, the boy immediately understood. As power grows, strikes slow down due to weight. In her awakened form, Rhea is his toughest opponent, but in a prolonged battle, she will lose. Where the fox, having taken the beast form, once stood, only the tree's foliage rose. The enemy, noticing the girl's sudden attack, directed his hand towards her. Just as the strike was to happen, the fox, with its speed, was already behind the knight. Feeling monster claws on his shoulder, the man with the silver ring was amazed by the speed. The long-eared one standing nearby shared the same opinion as the warrior. The doe decided to help the elf and tend to his wounds. Approximately 68 characters. When the green-eyed man asked why she did it, Rain replied that she only knew how to help. Returning to the knight, there were numerous blows delivered to his armor. The ogre, watching the duo maneuvering beside him, was surprised by this. The reason why Rhea, despite holding a B rank, can surpass a warrior of A rank lies in her incredible speed. Additionally, she relies entirely on this skill, but every ability has its downside. This was the fox's transformation back to its normal form, leaving it vulnerable. In the next moment, everyone watched as the beast woman was sent flying through the air. Crashing into a tree, the white-haired one felt the immense power of her opponent upon impact. Seeing his ally close her eyes, Ji-hoon immediately understood that it was all over. Deciding to play his trump card, he thought about how to set the angle correctly. Not wanting to get wet, the main character asked Rizzledrake if he was ready. The blondest one regretted using his last attack, but for Rhea's sake, he decided to go for it. When the main character was supposed to signal the little dragon, he didn't do it. He was stunned by the sudden appearance of the green-eyed man with broken weapons. Seeing an elf before him, the knight noted how merchandise should be alive. In response, the long-eared one declared that his opponent would have to take his life to proceed. After these words, the long-eared one vanished from where he had recently been. Only the elf's newly broken weapon failed to pierce the knight's armor. Without hesitation, the bearded man suddenly knocked the goods to the ground. As he walked by, the man noted how, thanks to the elf's foolish actions, his anger had subsided. Still, he wanted to show the fox her place by teaching her a lesson. Suddenly, a familiar piece of weaponry clashed with the knight's shield. Watching this, the main character couldn't understand why the elf took such a risk. For the umpteenth time, the person told the item to stop, knowing it didn't understand. Then he added that the blonde one wasn't to blame for being born a savage of a lower race. The green-eyed one seemed to understand human speech and became very angry. In that moment, He remembered being told in childhood that his magical reserve would grow with age. Only when the elf grew up did those around him begin to mock him, because he had less magic than an ordinary child. Not wanting to be weaklings, Leo decided to go on a journey and return strong. Only now, the green-eyed one, realizing his weakness, began to ask his father for forgiveness. Suddenly, the main character shouted at the dark elf, which surprised him. Without wasting time, Ji-hoon threw his blade at the long-eared one. After that, Leo grabbed the weapon, saying he'd be borrowing it for a while. At that moment, the green-eyed one felt an unimaginable amount of magic in the weapon. Even the nearby knight with the silver ring was surprised by this. Deciding to seize the new opportunity, the elf aimed his weapon at the enemy. But when the blade made contact with the armor, surprisingly, nothing happened. Taken by surprise, the bearded man laughed, calling the enemy's attack childish. The main character realized, while watching the elf, that this was not the end. He immediately recalled the brief battle with the long-eared one, who used a series of attacks. Like in the recent fight with the kid, the green-eyed one aimed his skill at the enemy. At the sight of her, the knight with the silver ring felt danger to his life again. And then an unimaginable attack was successfully launched against the enemy. The force of this blow was so immense that it knocked down the trees behind it. The doe, at that moment trying to heal Raya, was, to put it mildly, surprised. The main character, along with Rizzledrake, changed their face to match the emotion. Then, from the settling dust, a bearded man appeared in very poor condition. Another second later, the man, feeling the colossal damage, fell to the ground. Ji-hoon thought about how this elf had become several times stronger. Even Leo himself didn't immediately believe he could land such a powerful attack. Overcome by weakness, the elf looked at the dagger and realized it was all thanks to it. Realizing the battle was over, the protagonist told Rhine to tend to the elf and Ria's wounds. The defeated knight with the ring in his lip couldn't believe he lost to a lower race. The main character, appearing, suggested putting off the whining. Now he really wants to talk to the bearded man, Ji-hoon said, plunging in his dagger. Hovering over the man, the light-haired figure noticed that he had many questions for him. From this moment on, the lad set a condition for the knight. If he lied, he would die. To the boy's first question, how many warriors the kingdom had, the man said 3,000. As for the number of those patrolling outside, he didn't know. Then the main character inquired about the goal of the enslaving forces. Looking at the sharp dagger of the blonde, the knight with the ring in his lip pondered. At that moment, he remembered how the king had given him a task in the throne room, concluding with the search for stronger weapons for the kingdom. With these thoughts, the person shared that their task is to search for enhancement stones to create weapons. Hearing this, the protagonist thought about how it turned out to be too obvious. Adventures are exactly what you need to acquire enhancement stones and gear for your journey. The boy's next question was whether the warrior knew Ares and Ovna, to which he received an affirmative. Next, Ji-hoon asked just how many skills this duo actually possesses. He wanted to know what level these knights were, because with each level they gain new skills. And a couple of seconds later, the bearded man shared that Ares and Ares possessed 2 skills. And for the main character, this meant one thing. This duo already possessed level 20. Considering all the questions asked, the knight surmised that he intended to attack the kingdom. As soon as the knight with the silver ring in his lip saw the ogres, he laughed. After that, he asked the young man if he was really confident in his abilities with such allies. It won't be easy for him to break through the walls guarded by 2 elite knights. But that wasn't all, as besides this duo, there are other elite warriors out there. Hearing this, the main character tensed up, knowing there were waves in the game ahead. A maximum of only 7 elite knights could be gathered by the end. This is why choosing an S-rank knight greatly impacts wave progression. Recalling the recently passed 6th wave, the young man was amazed by the sheer number of elite warriors. Unlike in a game, this is reality, where soldiers get wounded and walls crumble. Restoring all of this takes a significant amount of time. And the reason why such frequent wars are even possible is due to one fact alone. The kingdom has someone who possesses the ability to restore. A woman's voice, done with the walls, asked the wounded to line up. And in the next moment, a blue beam illuminated all the gathered people, with the help of which recently wounded knights were completely healed. The healer Bombardier Akur possesses such an important ability and skill. Realizing the number of elite knights, Ji-hoon understood there could be even more. This is a dead-end situation for the monsters from the kingdom's view. For the main protagonist himself, this playthrough has super extreme hellish difficulty. Seeing the light-haired man's face, the bearded man noted his surprise. But that wasn't the main character's final question. He wanted to ask another. He was curious about what a legendary knight was and how they managed to summon it. Meanwhile, as the blonde waited for an answer, something flashed in the sky. The next second, Ji-hoon broke the arrow with one accurate swing. But that wasn't all. Many such arrows were sent flying toward the boy. The blonde man hesitated, dodging the blow by leaping back to avoid being hit. The nearby couple immediately realized that there were many people around them. These people turned out to be members of the Zero Squad, acting on the king's orders. Touching the ground, the man with the ring in his lip used his skill. Standing up, he asked the lad if he really thought he would obediently reveal all the kingdom's secrets. And since the blonde found out some information, he'll have to be killed. In his time, Ji-hoon shared how he learned about the bearded man from the rat man. He noted that if the commander doesn't return soon, his squad will go looking for him together. And seeing the crowd of knights, the hero said he expected them too. Plus, if a knight with a ring in his lip is the commander, he's definitely weaker. Hearing all these words, the surprised warrior couldn't understand why the boy was so sure of himself. In response, the main character said the commander and his team would be experience points. Hearing the words of the fair-haired warrior, it became even more unclear. After the main hero pointed at the enemies and told Rise to start, seeing the tiny monster, the bearded man laughed, wondering what it could possibly do. And then the commander of the Zero Squad ordered his men to capture everyone. Meanwhile, Rizzledrake began to focus his power into the ability Dragon's Breath. At the sight of the sudden red glow, the knight with the silver ring tensed up in alarm. But in the next moment, a beam of colossal energy struck the crowd with devastating force. The fading bearded man couldn't believe such an impossibly powerful attack. The rabbit and the elf were shocked by such a strong hit on the enemy. In a couple of moments, not even a trace of the humans remained. Following such a powerful attack on Rizzledrake, a fatigue effect was applied. The hero praised the dragon for its work after getting the right result. The blonde's thoughts were focused on one thing. All group sectors had increased their levels. But this seemed too little to the young man compared to how many knights they had destroyed. And yet, besides the experience, Ji-hoon saw a whole path of reinforcement stones before him. Upon seeing such a quantity, he was struck by a single purple pebble. Picking up a few, the boy learned something new. The stones don't break, even from Dragon's Breath. Without hesitating, the protagonist ordered his comrades to gather all the loot. The blonde himself, bringing up the system window, decided to check the group members' levels. From them, he learned that promotion depends on the character's rank, even with a small contribution to victory. Upon learning that Rizzledrake had reached level 10, Ji-hoon was delighted, as the dragon would now have a second skill. When the boy saw him, he couldn't believe someone like that existed. Meanwhile, unexpected changes were happening in the village of Varen. Tower, using the night buff, chopped down tree trunks with a weak strike. Feeling an unexpected surge of strength, he wondered what had happened. Then, the beastly creature found itself facing an entire crowd of gathered rat people. Returning to the main character, he decided to first deal with the disagreements. Turning to the elf, Ji-hoon asked why he fought so fiercely in the battle they faced. His actions showed it was not just to protect the ogres, but also for Ria's sake. The long-eared one lowered his gaze and shared his regret about what he did to the boy. The green-eyed one said goodbye, stating the lost need to go to the sea. But Leo himself was thinking of just one thing. That was his weakness. No matter how much he trained, his magical power remained unchanged, but survived the final blow dealt to the knight with the silver ring. He managed to discover a way to become stronger, the elf concluded. Suddenly, the protagonist asked the long-eared one, he doesn't have enough magical power. Using the Overlord's gaze, he learned that the amount was less than 1/10 of a regular dark elf's magical power. Hearing these words, the green-eyed man asked the boy how he knew. In response, the young man shared how he possessed a special skill that allowed him to see it. The elf, however, noted how, knowing this, he now felt as if the lad could see right through him. Holding a dagger before him, the hero revealed it was something unique. It grants magical power and boosts the strength of his magic attacks. Remembering the reason, he became stronger. Leo said he already knew this information before. Then the blonde said he would give it to the long-eared one, who was astonished. Wanting to know the reason for such generosity, the elf asked Ji-hoon why he had decided this. In response, he said he would give up the dagger, but the long-eared one would fight him. Taken aback by such words, Leo reminded them how dark elves don't unite with other races. Then the main character recalled the elf's wish to become even stronger. Though he has little magical power, his physical strength is much greater than others. After which the green-eyed one noted how the kid spoke as if he could truly see right through him. The young boy was absolutely correct in his assessment. as dark elves who lack magical abilities are often regarded with disdain and treated like worthless. Hearing this, the main character said, "It's decided now." Leo didn't understand what he meant, and then Ji-hoon added that he would make sure to compensate for the elf's lack of magical power, because he can continuously increase the weapon's magical power using enhancement stones. And then Leo was struck by a sudden crimson glow, which left him astonished. Approximately 80 characters. Sadly, this attempt proved shockingly futile, much to Ji-hoon's dismay. Approximately 71 characters. Not wanting to stop, the main character once again tried to upgrade his weapon. This time, the attempt was successful, and Leo noticed a magical increase. Having demonstrated an increase in magical power live, the lad confirmed his words. The elf, however, thought about how he could truly become stronger with this weapon. And daring to make such a proposal, the green-eyed one said he would serve for 10 years, but only for such a short term. The main character, in response, shared his opinion, agreeing to a short term. In a moment, the boy realized that 10 years is a short time for an elf. Then the green-eyed one decided to introduce himself to the boy. His name is Leon Bell Leon. Thus, Ji-hoon gained a trio of companions, bringing him almost to the completion of his quest. The next moment, Rhea and Rain showed the sacks filled with stones for reinforcement. Besides this, the fox managed to find a strange object, but at that very moment, a strange sound was heard. It was Leo's stomach rumbling, and hearing it, he became terribly embarrassed. Then, the protagonists' group, along with their new allies, decided to eat. There weren't as many collected stones as in Rhea's house, but among them were many high-level ones. Besides, they stumbled upon an unexpectedly valuable find, a rank stone. Taking one of them, the blonde asked Rain to take it for himself. The green-eyed girl took the pebble. She knew it right away. She and Riai found it with others. Handing her the rank stone, the main character told the girl to use it. And in the next moment, everyone was bathed in a crimson glow. 74 characters. Then, as experience was redistributed, the bunny woman's level shifted. 81 characters. The girl herself, looking at her hands, shared how she felt a surge of strength. Having achieved the desired result, the main character told her to use the next one. And then, a red flash suddenly appeared again in the middle of the forest. The next day, they set off to the swamp where the lizard people live. Leonard shared how he guided the lost ogres along the waterways to the sea, so it wasn't hard to convince the kid to go with them to Varen after they found the lizards. After some time of wandering, the main character expressed his deep sense of fatigue. Addressing Leon Bell, the young boy remarked on how he had such a complicated name. When the boy shortened his name to just Bell, the rabbit asked everyone to look ahead. Ahead, the group saw the outlines of swamps, which filled them with a sinister premonition. Bell immediately noted that the lizard folk were as strong as elves, meaning they would be difficult to gather. Because they are strong, these monsters will not wish to serve anyone. Hearing this, the main character stressed how this race is like the long-eared. Then the boy asked to leave the lizard recruitment to him because he had a plan. If the lizard folk are still the same as in the 100-wave game, they'll definitely manage to gather them. Ji-hoon concluded with complete confidence. At this time, some scaly creature was watching this small group of monsters. A moment later, the long-eared one, worried about the guard, called out to him. While the duo screamed they were drowning, the elf yelled for them to stop and not go further. Next, the same scaly figure appeared, noting how difficult it would be for the ogres to pass here due to their weight. The owner of this voice turned out to be a genuine lizard person named Linak. Raya, hesitating to follow the trio, also noticed this stranger. The main character quickly told the lizard about his plan to go to the settlement. Hearing this, the old man reminded the boy that lizards aren't very friendly. In response, Ji-hoon declared that he who does not risk does not drink champagne. Noticing the confidence in the blonde Linak's gaze, I suspected he had some kind of trump card up his sleeve. When the lizard questioned him, the boy explained he needed to borrow strength to attack the kingdom. He shared that after leaving, he wandered for many years and saw the cruelty of people. Looking at the other group members, he also noted the racial diversity. But then Linak saw the little dragon, and the boy introduced him to Risseldrake. The main character also noticed how much this little one sleeps. After learning about the newcomers, Linak decided to inform them about the settlement. Today was the leader's birthday, which will make it difficult for the travelers to persuade the lizards. He shared that the boy will need to show his strength because the chief is young and suspicious. In the end, the scaly one wished him luck in achieving his desires. He himself offered to look after the ogres in the others' absence. While the main character thanked the old man, Leo wasn't very happy about it. But in the end, Ji-hoon managed to persuade the long-eared one to trust the lizard. So the five went through the swamp straight to the lizard folk settlement. What surprised Ji-hoon the most was the strange attachment that the old man felt towards him. When the old man called the pair over, The ogres shared how they couldn't go with strangers. Then the lizard decided to resort to a trick. He decided to offer them food. And of course, this pair, without thinking, agreed to follow the good grandpa. On his way home, he thought that it would be noisy in Mudrak today. Returning to the group, I make my way through the thick fog and swamp, already exhausted. The five finally managed to reach the entrance to Mudrak village after some time. Not seeing any villagers, Ria guessed it was because the chief had a birthday. The main character and his group headed to the message center without waiting for the appointment. Having heard his comrades suggest waiting, Leo told them to follow the young fellow, you see, because he had a plan. Discontented Ria shared how she always does what Ji-hoon tells her to do, as usual. Seeing the long-eared girl's face, he surmised that the young man was quite taken with her. But the vixen, well, she started to deny it. Suddenly, the fair-haired man gestured for them to stop, having heard something, as did everyone else. Listening closely, he immediately knew where the faint tapping sound was coming from. While the main character was pointing the way, a silhouette appeared behind him. Seeing him, his worried comrades called out to Ji-hoon, concerned for him. Reacting just in time, the boy leaped aside as a spear struck the spot where he'd stood with tremendous force. 118 characters. Seeing a lizardman soldier before him, the protagonist was, to put it mildly, stunned by this sudden turn. 106 characters. Not wanting to let their comrade be harmed, Raya and Belle lunged at the lizard. While the green-eyed one blocked enemy attacks, the girl attacked from behind. Looking at this painting, the blonde-haired man told the allies to stop. Then, with great effort, the long-eared one managed to dodge the enemy's spear. In her time, the white-haired one rushed at the scaly one, claws at the ready. Watching this senseless slaughter, the boy told everyone to stop. 74 characters. Eventually, the trio came to a halt, awaiting their next course of action. The main character reminded Ria and Bella how they came here to fight for their cause. Turning to the lizard, Ji-hoon stated he wanted to speak with the chief. After some time, the chained group made their way to the ruler of these lands. The main character quickly decided to activate the master's gaze. He realized that even the lowest soldier had a much higher level than theirs. Hearing the noise, the lizard folk ordered the uninvited guests to be quiet. When the duo saw the place where all the lizard folk were, they were greatly astonished. It was all because right in front of the hero's group stood a real arena for battle. Looking ahead, Leo noticed someone fighting against a lizard monster. It was a 3-star knight who, desperate to survive, charged at the creature. But in that very instant, with one pathetic swing of the enemy's weapon, he lost his head. And seeing this whole scene, the main hero was greatly astonished, asking one question: what is a royal knight doing here? Especially one of such a high level. After defeating the foe, the lizard bowed its head and wished Lord Lyrak a happy birthday. In his time, the leader noted the greatness of the bloody battle worthy of the lizard people's warrior. Then one of the subordinates ordered the next opponent to be prepared. Approaching the cage, the lizard told the people to step forward if anyone wished to fight him. While everyone, not understanding the monster's speech, tried to drive it away, the girl among them trembled. Suddenly, a soldier lizard reported how he managed to catch intruders on their territory. And then the leader told his warrior to wait a bit with the fight. The scaly one standing nearby noted how, being in bolts, they didn't need guests. With these words, he asked the newcomers why they had come here. The main character, while assessing the lizards, was amazed by the power these monsters possess. But the real shock is who is sitting right in front of him on the throne. He was the leader of the lizard people, Lyrak, possessing an ES rank and level 36. The leader still got no reply, so he asked the uninvited guests himself why they were there. At that moment, Ji-hoon shared that he needs the power of the lizards. Hearing such words from the young man, the lizard leader burst into laughter. The words also brought laughter to all the others who were present here. Ria, however, couldn't understand what was so funny. The elf had told her not to be angry. The negotiations between them and the countless scaled creatures are just beginning. Yet still, this all comes with great risk to their lives. Noting the funniness of the words, the fair-haired Lyrak told him to continue. The main character himself was pondering how they needed to act decisively. If they bend even a little, the whole plan will go to waste, and they'll never be on equal footing. This world is built on the same rules as the game, which means that Ji-hoon meets the main conditions to become the leader of the lizards. And in the next moment, Ji-hoon commanded the lizards to obey him. After the sharp statement, the lizard soldier put his spear tip to the boy's throat. The comrades couldn't believe that this was the plan of Jit-hun after all. Not wanting to hear the kid anymore, the lizard suggested he slit his throat. Only in response did Lyrak tell his comrade to stop and lower his weapon, because his choice is the choice of the entire nation. He decides, and the rest follow him. Hearing this from the leader, the protagonist asked him who he was following then. The lizard nearby wouldn't stand for such boldness from a stranger. But then the light-haired one added, saying a couple of words, namely, the dragon Liesel. After the mention of the dragon, the current ruler of the lizards was fully attentive. At that very moment, the little guy shared that a dragon was currently on his head. Ji-hoon decided to bet that the lizard people worship and follow the dragons they adore. And knowing this fact, the blonde-haired man repeated once more, on his head is the one whom the lizards worship. The young man Lyrak was, to put it mildly, astonished by such a statement. He couldn't believe that the greatest being was standing right in front of him. At the same time, some lizards began to shout about the lack of truth on the side of the uninvited guests. Seeing Leo's surprised face, the girl couldn't believe he hadn't figured it out yet, seeing the dragons attack. At that time, he noted how this legendary race vanished over 100 years ago. They had immense wings and no less immense power. With a single breath, dragons could wipe an entire village from the face of the earth. But seeing Rizzledrake's sleepy little face, it's hard to even tell what race it belongs to. Lyrak agreed with the boy's words about their loyalty to the worship of dragons. Only the creature atop the blonde one's head wasn't what he claimed it to be, he stated. Other lizards asked the stranger how he dared to pass this monster off as a dragon. At the same time, the people of these lands craved the death of these liars. Comrades, turning to the elder, they asked him what they should do now. The boy himself was surprised the lizard chief didn't recognize the dragon. But then, Ji-hoon had a thought that he was just pretending not to know. Then the lizard man soldier pressed his weapon, causing blood to flow from the boy. Suddenly, Lyrak ordered them to stop, as he had thought of something amusing to do. Counting 4 strangers, he decided to make them fight against the 4 remaining people. And after a few seconds, the leader ordered the remaining people to leave the cage. In a couple of moments, 4 people appeared, condemned to execution. Lyrak shared how this quartet recently broke into Mudrak and tried to steal their treasure. Additionally, these wretched people dared to brutally kill a young warrior. With these words, the lizard folk leader ordered the 2 sides to fight, and those who managed to secure victory will thus be able to preserve life. When the elf wanted to object to such a decision, one of the lizards pointed out that the violators had no choice. The protagonist himself, addressing the leader, stated that his ignorance was irrelevant, because through his own strength, he will prove the truth of his words. More than anything, Ji-hoon wanted to demonstrate the true power of the dragon. Then the lizards dropped weapons for humans to make the fight more interesting. The knights were just happy to have the chance to survive by defeating the enemy. The blue-haired woman standing behind could no longer watch everyone suffer. The man in armor noted how everyone except the dark elf looked like weaklings. Wanting the blonde to win first, it became interesting who would be his opponent from this menagerie. As if understanding human speech, Rhea grew very angry from his haughty face. Addressing the boy, the lizard told him to inform the knight the fight was to the death. Hearing the blonde, the knight told his opponents to pick their first candidate. Judging by the number of stars among all the knights, this was the weakest, Ji-hoon concluded. And so, Ryan will fight this rabble, thought the protagonist, telling her to step forward. Seeing the rabbit's frightened face, Ji-hoon emphasized how much stronger she had become. Then, the green-eyed girl remembered the captain giving her strength to fight. After that, something definitely changed, concluded the rabbit. No longer wanting to be just a porter, Rain decided to show her importance in the group. Upon learning who the participants were, the lizard told the others to leave the arena. Ji-hoon recalled how the lizard leader recently strengthened their belief in dragons. And to solidify the Rizzledrake race, the young lad possesses a full 2 cards. But after the rank-up, this is a chance for Rain to gain real combat experience. The blonde couldn't believe the outcome when he saw his opponent. In her time, the rabbit had already regretted agreeing to the battle ahead. The knight exhaled heavily, for this battle would prove too easy for him, as rabbits were the weakest race of monsters. And after a few moments, the lizard judge announced the start of the battle between man and monster. I activate my power. The blonde was confident that 1 strike would be enough for victory. After which, using a lightning-fast burst, he closed the distance. And the next second, there was a rather strong impact that created a rumble. Worried about the green-eyed girl, Rhea called out to her friend, wanting to know how she was. Ji-hoon thought that for Rain, who had a D rank, this was an incredibly powerful strike. But now everything is different. As she has already reached B rank, the doe herself, fearing for her own life, dodged with the help of Zephyrophoma. The main character was observing how the 2nd-level skill was dramatically enhancing his attributes. As for the knight himself, he refused to accept that some monster had dared to disgrace him. Wishing to end it with a flourish, The blonde rushed at his opponent. The green-eyed one, seeing the approaching person, became very frightened. But at the same time, she remembered the captain's words about how her powers had grown. And knowing this, the doe no longer intended to tuck her tail in the face of danger. She didn't want to lose anyone else she cared about because of her own helplessness. Realizing escape was not an option, Rain decided on her first attack. Instantly, to the blonde's surprise, fire appeared before him out of nowhere. Watching this scene, the main character immediately understood that this was Rain's new skill. Then the blonde was able to see the burning paw of the rabbit in a split second. And in an instant, the arrogant knight was sent flying with a single blow. The other girls were astonished by this unexpected revelation of power. Ji-hoon only thought that if things had gone differently, he would have intervened, showing dragon power. But he couldn't even imagine that the green-eyed girl could truly win the fight. Reincarnated, Rain couldn't believe she possessed such incredible power now. After winning, she immediately rushed to the captain, eager for his praise. The hero was happy to congratulate the green-eyed girl on her win. Now she had become the strongest rabbit beastkin in this world, which she was incredibly delighted by. From that fight, Rain gained a lot of experience, raising her level to 18. The elf wondered how that beastly creature managed to gain such power without much training. Then he recalled their first meeting, where Rain declared she could only help her comrades, nothing more. Approximately 107 characters. Looking at Ji-hoon, he also noted how his true strength lies in his ability to make others stronger. Thus, the Beastman Rabbit managed to become the winner of the first battle. The blonde was still alive, so he wasn't going to give up easily. No one wanted to listen to this knight anymore, as his fate was already decided. The same blue-haired girl spoke out about how she can't watch this anymore. The lizard soldier told people to choose the next candidate for battle. She turned out to be the girl who headed straight for the arena. Even the lizard folk were stunned by the human's determination to fight. The elf, however, noted how this girl slipped into the arena in a mere instant. The boy thought about how he didn't know who the knight with the ring was, but he knew this warrior well. It's because it's the yellow energy blade of the beautiful Kalhra. At first glance, there's nothing special, and it may even seem different at first. But in reality, this blue-haired girl is completely obsessed with fighting. Or in other words, a sadistic character who derives pleasure from inflicting pain on others. Noticing and pointing to one of the remaining trio, Kalhra wanted to ask him something. Does the leader of the monster group want to fight her? The boy tensed at such words. Then the blue-haired girl rephrased her question, asking if the boy wanted to play with her. Seeing the strange look this girl was giving Ji-hoon, the fox became curious about what she wanted. The lizardman also asked the kid what the blue-haired girl had said. Having told them of their intentions to fight him, the girls told him to come down. Kalhra, a knight of the highest rank with A-level power, was equipped with unique gear that set her apart from others. Even among A ranks, she operates on an entirely different level. No matter how strong she is, at that level, she simply won't be able to withstand the dragon's breath. Still, what the main character will need to do is take the girl's momentum away. Thinking about all these factors, Ji-hoon decided to participate with Rizal. Learning that this duo only fights together, the blue-haired girl was even glad. Turning to Belle, the main character asked to borrow his weapon for the fight. When the elf noted the opponent's strength, the lad shared what he knew. The lizard folk chieftain named Lirak, seated on his throne, pondered his own thoughts. He remembered his mom telling him about dragons when he was a child. And when he grows up, he can use their power, which made the lizard very happy. Now he watched the protagonist and the red creature, not understanding if the kid's words were true. The blonde one, before the fight, wanted to clear something up for better understanding. He was curious about what would happen if a lizard nearby got hurt during the fight. The chief, hearing this, said there was nothing to worry about as the arena was huge for fighting humans. The blue-haired girl tried to figure out how to kill her enemy. Looking at the main character, a multitude of agonizing deaths flashed through her mind. And after a few seconds, Kalhra shared with the boy that she had made a choice. Watching the red-eyed one, Leo pointed out how strangely she held her blade, after which, lightning energy began to focus in the blue-haired woman's hand. Upon seeing the storm flow, the long-eared creature quickly understood what the person planned to do. A lightning bolt flashed near the elf, striking the lizard man dead in an instant. Approximately 82 characters. Glancing at the scorched ground, he realized ignorance of such magic meant certain death. Approximately 97 characters. But fortunately, the lizard man's weapon got stuck in the shield, thus preventing him from dying. Looking at the main character, Leo became curious about how he dodged. Ria shared with her friend how he didn't even budge from his spot. But at the same time, a drop of blood from a cut appeared on the blonde's cheek. The girl, looking at the boy, shared her surprise and asked him a single question. Did the kid know that she would miss, which is why he didn't even try to dodge? Watching the battle, one of the knights thought about how the blue-haired woman was the captain's second in command. Kalharu is called the beauty of the Yellow Stream, but among the knights, she's known as the invading watcher, constantly inflicting pain on the enemy with a brutal attacking style, slowly bringing them to their death. She never granted her opponent a quick death, but no enemy ever knew this fact, for there was no one to tell. While looking at the boy, the blue-haired girl shared how she came up with a wonderful idea. At first, she decided to get rid of the annoying fly behind the blonde. Hearing this, the main character became very scared for his friend's life. Seeing the kid's face, Kalhara instantly knew that it was the right decision to make. In the next moment, Ji-hoon rushed to help Rizzledrake, covering him from danger. The young lads understood how unprofitable this was for the captain. The main hero told the little dragon to stay behind him and not to come out. Then the battle began, where Ji-hoon was just dodging every attack thrown. But still, the protagonist didn't want to just dodge the blows, so he charged headfirst into an attack. The blue-haired girl was only too happy about that, because now she could savor the face of her defeated opponent. Sticking the spear into the ground, Kalhur activated his skill called Yellow Spear. Looking at the glow forming beneath his feet, the blonde was amazed. And then the newly formed electric ring sparked with energy. Feeling the huge energy of the lightning, the main character started to scream. The fox, who was outside the arena, became quite worried, about Ji-hoon. The blonde one alone decided to withstand the attack, clenching his jaw in pain. Kalkara, seeing the main character's face, called him beautiful. The knight in armor understood that the girl would enjoy this until her opponent lost consciousness. But after that, she will stop, and her opponent will feel even more pain from her actions. The blue-haired girl, watching the boy's torment, wanted to hear what he was feeling inside. The same knight was struck by how long his opponent Kalhara had managed to last, 10 seconds. At that moment, Ji-hoon was pondering that the opponent's current level was no more than 29. This means her maximum magical power is no more than 1,500. The recent surge onto the arena costs 400 points of magical power. The directed electric cloud passes the boy, consuming 100 points, and the electric ring formed over the entire area of the arena takes away 50 points per second. Having held out for 11 seconds, the protagonist counted 350 points remaining. With such a small amount of cal, Hera will not be able to utilize the fluid dash. Seeing the smirk on her opponent's face, the blue-haired girl said she didn't like it. The protagonist, however, told the knight she must take a blow to no pain. And in the next second, Rizzledrake, who had appeared, began activating his skill. Watching the growing energy in the little dragon Cal's maw, she was astonished. But the next moment, the blue-haired girl saw only an approaching beam. Finding herself under it, the girl felt a pain that she no longer liked very much. The sudden surprise made the leader of the lizard people jump from his throne. Looking at the red glow, he was once again reminded of his mother's words about dragons. After a few seconds, the glow faded, revealing a massive trench in its place. Approximately 84 characters, the main hero collapsed helplessly to the ground, staring blankly ahead. His friends rushed to Ji-hoon while Lirak struggled to comprehend what was happening. He finally understood that he was witnessing the true breath of the dragon, a rare skill achieved by the greatest warriors, which is but a fraction compared to the power of the original. Having shown such a spectacle, Ji-hoon assumed the leader would now believe. Next, the youngster added, noting how the lizard folk revere dragons, and remembering Rizzledrake's recently acquired skill, he decided to eliminate all doubts. With these thoughts, the main character told the dragon to activate the skill. And so, you see, the ability known as the transition to adult form was activated. This red beam was visible even beyond the settlement in the swamps. Seeing the painted sky, the old man said aloud, "The legend has awakened." Gazing at the sky, the lizard folk gathered around the arena couldn't believe their eyes. The people, witnessing such a spectacle, couldn't contain their astonishment either. The doe and the fox were of the same opinion at the sight of such a surprise. As for the leader of the lizard tribe, he was shocked, showing it in every way. And it's all because the most real dragon, Rizzledrake, appeared before him. Upon seeing him, the protagonist was also astonished, for it was the boss of the 99th wave. Raising his head, the scaly one shared with everyone how he finally saw the legend they passed down through their scales and blood for many years. In the next moment, the same lizard, kneeling, called himself the leader of the lizard people. After which, turning to the main character, he swore from that moment on to serve him as their new master, concluded Lirak. showing with all his demeanor the seriousness of these words. The lizard people who were nearby followed the same example set by their leader. Leo, looking at everyone around him, was astonished to see that Ji-hoon had truly united with the lizards. The main hero, unable to hide his smile, was thrilled to have achieved his goal at last. Now he stood equal to the arrogant king of the pitiful kingdom. But a sudden flap of wings raised dust and pulled the boy from his thoughts. When the dragon soared beneath him, the rabbit that was there took flight. The elf was, to put it mildly, surprised by the dragon's might, as it was hard to even stand with the beat of its wings. Then everyone present saw the creature from legends whispered about. Only now was the legendary race standing right in front of them at that moment. This time, the main character became the one who created a powerful being in this world. Suddenly, Ji-hoon remembered the strange black pixels on the dragon's head in the game. The boy concluded that the stain was someone's silhouette, looking at the transformed Risedrake. Looking at his little dragon, the protagonist became very worried about him. Without thinking of letting Rizzle fall, the boy managed to catch him in his hands. While the little dragon was glad to be in Ji-hoon's hands, he began to praise him. Still, the main character felt that this time was not enough, which meant there was something to strive for. At the same time, a system window appeared for adding allies. Thus, the current main quest to create the monster faction has been successfully completed. The protagonist decided to claim the reward for completing the task. It turned out to be a genuine A-rank enhancement stone that allows upgrades up to the ES rank. At the same time, another system window appeared. From now on, the young man, having reached level 10, would gain his own existence through the sum of his achievements. Seeing this text, the protagonist didn't immediately understand the notification. Then the following system window appeared, in which the boy recognized. Regardless of how one views this third kind of being, it was the Master of Bound Souls. In the place where racial affiliation should have been written, this title now proudly stood. Sometime after the new ruler was accepted, the lizards decided to continue the celebration. Only now, in addition to the leader's birthday, they celebrated the ascension of the new ruler. Lirak, addressing the protagonist's group, told them that they were their honored guests. At this time, the boy, healed by the ointments, thanked the scaly one. His comrades, observing the lad's incredible appetite, were astonished. The trio, feeling hungry, decided to take advantage of the lizard's hospitality. They rushed to the main character to share a meal with him together. After a while, the group was able to eat their fill, as their words revealed. Hearing Ji-hoon's question about where Rizzledrake had gone, the elf shared that he is currently at the top of the temple. Hearing this, the blonde wanted to know and decided to look ahead. But what the protagonist saw next, to put it mildly, astonished him. It's because the little dragon rested better than everyone else after the battle. Bell noted how the lizards followed Rizzledrake more readily than the captain. In response, Ji-hoon said he and the dragon are one. They can't be without each other. After such a long journey, the group of boys found much to cherish and learn. Now, they all deserve the long-awaited rest from the road and their battles. While in Mudrak, the lizards celebrated their reunion with their new comrades. One of the knights managed to escape the swamps, already reaching the kingdom's walls. Heading to the gate, the man wanted to tell how the legendary knight gathers monsters. By this time, a rather familiar raft had washed ashore in the kingdom. This is the surviving pack of bandits, whom I decided to bring to the king to decide their fate. Tired from the long water journey, the crane spotted something interesting. It was a portrait of the main character with a royal warrant for his arrest. In the throne room, the king ordered everyone hanged, but the bandits wanted to explain. And while they were deciding what to do with the pack, a pair entered the hall. One of the subordinates immediately recognized Acker, who is Lockhand's subordinate. The knight told how their whole squad was destroyed near the Kwanchan Highlands. Next, when questioned, he shared how he was fortunate enough to survive, and it was all thanks to the powerful attack of the legendary hero and some strange monster. Recalling all the horrors he endured, the knight, seething with rage, recounted how they were all slaughtered, approximately 115 characters. He survived only by injuring his leg and hiding, waiting for his comrades, approximately 78 characters. But later he overheard the legendary hero, who decided to gather monsters in order to launch a full-scale attack on their kingdom, wishing to destroy it. Hearing this, the advisors were shocked the kid was still alive, and now he planned to attack. Listening to the surviving knight, they asked the following question: where is the legendary hero now? And when the armored man hesitated for a moment, the shaggy-haired individual standing nearby uttered just two words: Fox Cave. Hearing the bandit, the king ordered the rabble to repeat what he had said. Then the crane declared to the whole throne room that he knew where the hero's refuge was. After a moment's thought, the king ordered all the castle's elite knights to gather at once, to form a punitive squad led by elite knights for the mission ahead. At that moment, the subordinate chose to carry out the king's command without delay. The shaggy one was just glad, mentally addressing his brother's enemies, telling them to await their end. While Ares ordered the warriors to prepare for the next wave, a knight spoke to him. When he was all attention, the same knight added he had an order from the king. Another knight turned to the brute, who held a boulder in one hand, like Lord Uros. And then the holy knight Lib was also warned about the king's decree. Next in line was Bianca, who, like all the other elite knights, had also been summoned to the king's presence. Pulling his brush from the canvas, the knight asked if his presence was truly required. But when they tried to bring Sir Cancer, it proved quite difficult. Not wanting to disobey, the knight opened the door and spoke to the elite warrior. The man surprised the arriving knight with his appearance. Cancer, however, suggested that something quite interesting had happened. Upon reaching the exit of Bell Settlement, he shared how he needed to leave his comrades for a while. The doe, calling out to the long-eared one, said she was going to go with him. When asked why she decided that, Rain replied that she wanted to breathe fresh air, not be stuck in the swamps. Hearing the boy's suggestion that she too would leave, Rhea declared that he could relax because she would stay with him. Next, the two discussed Ji-hoon's new clothes, which he changed because the old ones were worn out. Heading into the settlement, the fox even noted how well the new outfit suited the lad. Suddenly, the lizard that was nearby commanded the remaining mortal to come out. Turning to Dayrak, the fair-haired man asked him what was happening. When the main character walked past the cage, the knight inside addressed him. When asked what he wanted, the man in armor shared that he needed to go to the toilet. After asking the others if they were all right, the knights replied affirmatively. The knight thanked the boy for the chance to use the toilet. The main character once claimed there's nothing wrong with this at all. In the alley, the knight shared how well this place would suit him. Sensing someone was unwelcome, the knight's shyness, Ji-hoon realized it was about the girl. Approximately 91 characters. Addressing Rhea, the main character noted how awkward it would be for the knight when she looked at him. And then the same man asked the pair to leave, assuring them there would be no escape. A passing lizard noticed the duo and greeted them. Approximately 60 characters. When the girl asked why they paid so much attention to people, the boy suggested that this way they would become less cautious towards them. Because they won't be executed. Since all high-ranking knights come from noble families, they'll be valuable prisoners. Hearing this, the fox now understood why the main character was so interested in these little humans. Suddenly, from the place where the knight was, a scream was heard. Moving forward, Ji-hoon was, to put it mildly, astonished by what he saw. And it's all because this knight turned out to be a girl who was scared of a snake. After talking with her, the protagonist learned that the helmet could change the wearer's voice, which is why Ji-hoon didn't understand who this knight was. Taking the girl to the cage, Rhea told the main character that she knew everything. At this time, Belle and Rain were making their way through the foggy swamp. The doe noticed how the long-eared one had a kind heart, for he left worried about the ogres. The elf reminded him how he was doing it, because he had promised the duo he would help. Seeing the creature that suddenly appeared, Leo asked it why it was there. Back in Mudrak at the chief's house, Lirak didn't want to agree to help attack the people. Pointing at Rizzledrake, the guy shared how he completely agreed with his decision. The main character recalled how people invaded and killed the young warrior. After being directly refused by Ji-hoon again, he asked the chief why he was hesitating, if he was afraid. In response, Lirak stated that they were not afraid of battles. When the boy wanted to know the reason, an unknown figure entered the chief's home. Then a familiar voice for Ji-hoon said, "There's only one reason they are stalling for time right now. It's because the lizard folk have never ventured beyond Mudrak," the old man concluded. Seeing the former elder, the current one asked why he had come. In time, Lenik explained to the surprised white-haired woman that he was a former chief. But now the main character understood who those two S-rank lizards in the statistics were. Right here, Lirak reminded Lenik that a loser in a duel never returns to the past. In response, the old man declared he would be the one to challenge the scaly one. The main character himself, observing the duo, was struck by such suddenness. And after a while, they all found themselves at the arena, waiting for the duel to begin. Though it was unexpected, Ji-hoon will be able to see the true combat power of the lizard people. Armed Lirak emphasized that there is no mercy for those who do not know their place. And then the red-scaled one, having colored its eyes green, activated the skill. It was the gigantization, through which a red monster rose in the middle of the arena. The old man wanted to show the strength of someone who adapts to their surroundings. The main character was fully focused, awaiting a spectacular fight. At the same time, he caught sight of the lizard folk in their priestly garb. The lizard told the hero that if they didn't build a barrier around the arena, the village could be harmed. It was then that the fair-haired one remembered how he himself had told the leader how he could use the dragon's breath. Now Ji-hoon understood what all this security, gained by the barrier, was for. With this thought, the main character summoned a system window. After the duel with Kalhara, the kid gained 2 more squad members. But Lirak has not yet joined the squad, which means he is still not on their side. Thus, thanks to the battle with Lirak, they can gain experience from an S-rank monster. When the barrier was fully formed, another giant appeared within it, surprising all. As they examined the barrier, the duo was amazed it could even hold back the haze. But they were struck by a completely different level of change. Thus, the 2 scaled giants faced off in a duel against each other. Not daring to wait for the enemy's attack, Lirak rushed at his opponent. At one point, Linak, with a sharp jerk, managed to evade the attack of the current elder. Next, the ginger one decided to attack his opponent while he was trying to retreat. But observing the opponent's attack, Lirak decided to resort to using his tail, with which the opponent was sent into the barrier with a single blow. Then, without waiting, Lirak opened his maw and lunged at the former elder. Looking at each other, the pair simultaneously activated the strength boost skill. The formed limb moved toward the enemy, wishing to put an end to him at last. In the next moment, Linak was smashed into the ground, breaking it beneath him. The protagonist, watching this spectacle, realized he was no match for the lizard. Although the level of Linak is higher, the distribution of characteristics varies even among ESS ranks. But still, the ginger one had a characteristic that surpassed the red lizard. It was a magical power that he decided to harness, forming a lightning bolt. In an instant, a lightning strike hit the arena, shaking the ground beneath them. Once again, the 2 found themselves at a distance, just like at the start. Addressing Lirak, the lizard folk emphasized his growth in physical strength and power. The red-scaled one chose to remain silent, absorbing such praise in quiet. Linak continued. He explained how, having left the swamp territories, he got used to the dampness and darkness. The sunlight outside, in the open world, had scorched the moisture from his skin, and the hot blood of the monsters drove them mad. It dulled their sight and senses. Hearing this, the protagonist realized the lizard folk weaken outside their territories. But in the end, Linak managed to adapt to his surroundings quite well. In response, Lirak noted that not everyone can adapt to the world like the redhead. And he, the leader responsible for the safety and prosperity of the lizard people, cannot make a reckless choice. However, the fact that they inherited the dragon's power might not be solely for protection. Hearing these words from the red-scaled Lirak, I pondered their meaning. In that very moment, he recalled his mother's words about how the dragons had shared their powers with them. So, does that mean, he wondered, that they too have someone they need to save? Reminding again that only the leader can solve this, Lirak challenged his opponent to prove his choice with strength. Once both sides agreed to these terms, they resorted to the dragon's breath technique. At the sight of the familiar red glow, even Rizzledrake came to his senses. In the next instant, both sides unleashed powerful beams at each other. Watching them, the pair behind the barrier was stunned by the spectacle. Then, in the center of the arena, an explosion occurred, accompanied by a roar. The fox, looking at the pair, noted how neither of them intended to give up. The other lizards were shocked to witness the clash of the 2 strongest beings of their kind. The next moment, an explosion erupted inside the barrier, shooting toward the sky. The 4 who recently met felt the tremors of the earthquake around them. The dark elf immediately sensed it was coming from the arena nearby. Remembering Ji-hoon, the long-eared one asked the doe to look after the ogres. At that moment, the hero noted the barrier didn't even crack from such power. But still, everyone was curious about who won in such a confrontation. And after some time, a silhouette began to emerge from the rising dust. The voice of the victorious lizard man declared himself leader of his people. And he is absolutely unwilling to endure even a single defeat, the same voice added. Standing over the body of the red-scaled Lirak, he asked if he had any last words. Linak noted how strong the lizard folk are, and therefore they will surely be able to adapt. Looking at his opponent, the red one understood he never intended to take the leader's place. The main character, looking at this picture, thought the same thing, a second time. Parnishka had hoped never to see Mudrak's story repeat itself again. Now Ji-hoon realized, remembering the rat tribe, that every wave has a reason. In the game, lizard folk attack the kingdom after the 30th wave. This is likely the outcome of today's battle. Linak's persuasion proved to be successful after all. Such is the unchanging course of history, concluded the hero, watching the battle end. However, if anything has changed, the course of the initial story will also be moved forward. In the next moment, a system window appeared before the young man with a new main quest, but it turned out to be an emergency intervention mission. The young man needed to stop the expeditionary detachment. More than 500 knights, led by the ES rank knights, were heading to Varan. At the same time, a troubled dark elf appeared in the center of the arena. Bell asked the protagonist what had happened when they met. Approximately 74 characters. In response, the protagonist warned allies of an impending attack on Varan. Approximately 88 characters. By this time, the gates to the kingdom had opened, and an army emerged from them. The elite knight on the wall was clearly displeased about something. Having returned for a time, 6 special knights gathered before the king. First to introduce himself was Captain Owen of the 1st Knight Squad, Hamal. Second place went to Uros, captain of the 2nd Aldebaran Knight Squad. The third was Bianca, and the 4th girl introduced herself as Cancer. The blonde called herself Lib, and the bespectacled one next to her introduced herself as Captain Akur of the 11th Squad. Addressing Uros, the king decided to appoint him commander of the Conquest Squad. In response, the brute bowed his head and said to give him the main forces. The objective of the Conquest Squad was to destroy the gathered monsters. Returning to the present, Ares couldn't believe he would be left on the walls of the kingdom. But besides him, it was decided to keep 2 more elite warriors for protection. Noticing Cancer, the spearman asked why she had stayed here, since it was she who had lost contact with her people in the north. But the girl replied that it didn't particularly bother her, which surprised Ares. Then the warrior woman assumed that Ares was worried about her, to which he shared how he worried about her people. At such an answer, the smile vanished from Cancer's face just as quickly as it had appeared. Noticing the boredom on the walls, the girl decided to go down, which pleased the ram. The man who ran up shared with Lady Cancer that her schedule had no saved changes. This same guy reminded the girl that she needs to perform today, and it's important. When Ares asked why she was so eager to fight, the bespectacled one said it was for her own pleasure. Ares' reason was to help the Majesty fulfill his dream of destroying the monsters once and for all. Recalling Archaon, the Lancer asked if he was just as fanatical. Approximately 72 characters. At that time, kids were playing in the alley, acting out a knight and a monster. The white-haired man noted how he had once been a monster of a man and a star, existing between heaven and earth. Looking at the sky, a child pointed and saw a star, even though it was still daytime. Listening to the child's words, the old man turned his gaze in that indicated direction, and then he himself pointed out how another double star had risen in the sky. Returning to Mudrak, the protagonist's companions were surprised to learn of the attack on their village. The protagonist noted how they needed to get to Varan in one day. Sending the duo forward, Ji-hoon told them he would contact them with further instructions. Realizing a battle was coming, the hero offered the duo enhancement stones. And then, the nearby chieftain, he noticed this red glow, emanating from the trio. He immediately noticed how the fox's power changed noticeably after the flash of light. Thus, Rhea managed to rise to A rank with a level of 19 in her skills. Regarding the enhancement stone, A rank understood the success rate was only 35%. The blonde also realized that Lib would be participating in this expedition. Aware of these 2 facts, the protagonist still chose to use the stone after all. After a moment, the duo headed first toward Varina without hesitation. Realizing what was happening, Lyrak asked the boy, "Are we being attacked?" Ji-hoon shared that all the various races living in his village are currently facing a significant threat. Suddenly, the Scaled One interrupted the boy, saying he would go. Next, the Lizard Man, turning to his comrade, told him to gather the warriors. The main character, realizing the Red One agreed, felt a surge of joy and excitement. Right after that, the priest noted that the leader needed to focus on healing, which would take a week. Hearing this, the Lizard Chief objected, as this would be their first battle outside the swamps. But then, spitefully, a bloody cough burst from the Scaly One's mouth, from wounds taken in a recent duel. After that, the Lizardman soldier asked Lord Lyrak to rest for his own safety and well-being. At the same time, a Lizardman named Darak appeared with a spear, offering to lead the warriors. Seeing the familiar monster, the protagonist activated the Overlord's gaze in that instant. And that one turned out to be A-Rang, level 41. He'll probably be the next candidate for chief. After getting the leader's approval, Darak promised to win, even if it meant sacrificing himself. Upon hearing such words from his comrade, Lyrak turned to him. After that, he declared that if the lizard died in battle, he would remember it. For he would never succumb to the influence of his surroundings, concluded Lyrak. Then the rabbit noticed the main character approaching from behind. Running up to him, Rain shared how she had seen Ray and Belle fleeing. Glancing over, Ji-hoon decided to offer Varan's help to the green-eyed girl. Upon seeing them, the doe asked the captain what the lizard people were doing here. In response, the main character stated that he would return to Varan with them. When asked about the ogres, Ji-hoon assured that they would be fine, as the lizards would handle them. Then Darak turned to Ji-hoon and asked him to climb onto his back, as it would be faster that way. As for the female rabbit, the lizard woman decided to take her on, and moments later, the entire crowd found themselves at the edge of the swamp. But the next second, unwilling to fear the sun, the lizard folk charged forward. Ji-hun himself was pleased with how he managed to recruit 50 elite warriors from Mudrak, of which 30 were A rank. Addressing the humans, the blonde told them to wait as their allies were approaching. Meanwhile, an elite knight named Bianca harnessed her power for the battle ahead. The white-haired one summoned a shadow blade and threw it at the falling tree shadow. Later, she said that as long as there is light, the shadow will never disappear. Saying this, the elite knight vanished the shadow blade into the ground. Lib approached and asked her companion. She decided to establish a point here, but at that very moment, strange things began to happen to Bianca's shadow. At the sight of them, the white-haired woman asked the holy knight to step back for safety. When the blonde finally walked away, Bianca thanked her for her help and support. Lib finally decided to explain how their advance had fallen far behind. Suddenly, amidst the thick trunks of the trees, a multitude of wolf paws appeared. Uros immediately felt the bloodthirstiness emanating from the forest behind him. Realizing the danger, the bearded man ordered his men to halt the procession. In response to Bianca's question about what had happened, Lib shared that besides them, there was someone else here. Uros said that these creatures were hiding, as if waiting for darkness. But then, at the edge of the elevation, a source of bloodthirst emerged. It turned out to be a dire wolf, armed with sharp fangs and not insignificant size. The next second, a loud howl from the creature echoed through the forest, after which a whole pack of wolves appeared, causing the people to become wary at once. One of the warriors, addressing the commander, noted that about 1,000 monsters had gathered here. Commanding his men to pull themselves together, he said to form the 1st to 3rd squads on the flanks. Thus, people created a wall in front of the monsters using shields. Bianca wondered if they should really fight the wolves, or if it would be better to meet them within the kingdom's walls. Hearing this, Lib emphasized how monsters think the same way they do. The raging wolf on the slope knew this was their chance to tear the throats of the humans. In the next moment, the pack leader urged his brethren to charge into the attack. A massive crowd of monsters headed toward the defending humans in the fight. Watching the approaching foes, Uros ordered his men to prepare for the clash. In a few seconds, the wolves began to charge at the shields, trying to break through. Feeling the pressure mounting, the elite knight, he told his men to hold their ground. The pack leader once ordered his packmates to jump the defense. This was the moment Uros had been waiting for, and he immediately decided to use the spearman. After that, many sharp points were aimed upward to strike down the enemy swiftly. Just a few pitiful seconds later, a vast number of wolves were slain in the chaos. At this time, on the walls of the kingdom, Owen felt intensely bored. Noticing how the sun was setting, he wondered if the knights would be able to return today. Back with the expeditionary army, they had already finished with the wolves. The pack heard the leader's words but didn't understand his speech. Bianca, surrounded by corpses, felt the unbearable stench of blood around her. As she walked through the bodies, she added that wars leave only filth and horror. As a result of this battle, 82 were wounded and 1 was killed. Next, the elite knight, addressing the criminal standing behind him, told him to continue leading them. But Patlati, seeing the true power of the royal knights, was very pleased. With their help, the crane planned to get revenge on the legendary hero. At that moment, the main character turned to Rhea, asking where they were already. Hearing Ji-hoon's suddenly appearing voice in their heads, the duo was taken aback. The young man was glad that after his existence was acknowledged, he gained so many new abilities. Then the blonde boy activated a massive message to all the allies in the game. While everyone tried to figure it out, the kid decided to share their plan. Recently, the monsters helped Verena restore the little village they had arrived at. Suddenly, a pair appeared among the trees, eager to share something important. The assembled army was already at the mountains, where the monster settlement was. Uros ordered the warriors to gather the vanguard and spread the troops wide. The bearded man reminded his subordinates their mission was total annihilation. Moving to the main character, I realized while on the lizard's back that it would take them half a day to travel. Remembering his friends, Ji-hoon hoped they would manage to hold on until he arrived to help them out. Upon their appearance, Tor learned about the predicament they were facing. As the whole plan was finally given to the beastman, a rabbit appeared among the trees. Hearing about the Tavrians, he realized that everything the fox said was pure truth. Arriving at the passage, the shaggy one noted how it seemed to grow larger in size. But then, not wanting to dwell on it, the crane added that there would be traps ahead. The knight heard the bandit, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a strange map. Examining it, the bearded man noted he would have to use this particular one. Addressing Lib, he decided to give the girl 50 knights and send them to the vanguard. Hearing the words about the small number, Uros shared that they first need to assess the enemy's reaction. Because perhaps His Majesty overestimated the monsters, but if that's the case, they can handle it with just one squad. And so, Bianca, having touched the blonde's armor, she asked her to be careful. Dark energy began to emanate from the white-haired one's hand, which in turn was absorbed into the steel. Recalling the criminal, the blonde told him to hurry as he would be showing the way. And moments later, they found themselves in a cave, escorted by the shaggy-haired one. He immediately noticed a patch of ground on his hike with bandits was a different color. After these words, the ground beneath the knight's feet vanished, sending them into flight. As she approached the bottom, the blonde turned to her subordinate, Shamari. The girl, using her abilities in time, formed an earthen mound to protect her team, with which the entire squad found themselves safe and without any injuries. The crane, remembering the trap from the past, was surprised at how easily the knights had escaped danger. But then, right before his eyes, the cave ceiling began to crumble down on the people. This time, the girl also asked the commander to leave the problem to her. In the next moment, a sooty hand appeared in the passage, plugging the hole in the ceiling. He was so taken aback by such a solution to the problems that he didn't know how to react. After a while, the squad reached a fork in the path, but this time there were more passages. Using magic, the knights were able to determine which path to choose. Having found the source of the strong light, they immediately set out. In just a few moments, Lib found herself on the outskirts of the village. Seeing which, the blonde ordered her people not to let their guard down. Noticing many holes in the ground ahead of them, they assumed that there might be rabbits there. Then the holy knight ordered his subordinate to check for monsters. The 3-star knight, thrusting his spear into a hole, decided to use his ability, under the title Eruption of Flames, which led to the emergence of numerous pillars of fire. In the end, everyone was amazed that there were no monsters in any of the holes. Cutting the rope binding the criminal, Lib told him to earn his keep, approximately 78 characters. Meanwhile, it became clear this was the first time the blonde and her ally had left the castle in so long, approximately 115 characters. Shamari noted how no one could believe that coward Lib would become captain. Then she reminded her friend how they had entered the forbidden cave, and the blonde's eyes were so swollen from tears that it looked like they were about to burst. At that time, the knights searched every house in the village but noticed no one. The man in armor who ran up reported that all the buildings were empty. Lib was stunned by this turn of events because they had surrounded the place. Deciding to check everything herself, Shamari rushed forward, asking the captain to wait. The blonde had a fleeting thought that the villagers had abandoned their village. While the night squad searched for anyone in the village, the monsters carved a new path. Each of the beings had their own role in digging the tunnel outward. Rhea, watching everyone, pondered the first step in the strategy devised by Ji-hoon. They had to leave Varan because they wouldn't survive against ES-rank knights. And that was comparable to trying to stop a rocket with a shield. When all residents are outside the Varan territories, the second stage begins. At that moment, the passage behind Lib was suddenly blocked. Approximately 66 characters. The Holy Knight turned, shocked by the unexpected situation. And so, the people who entered the village locked themselves in a prison. Suddenly, the knights caught sight of a stranger's silhouette trying to escape. People instantly recognized a dark elf, one they had no intention of letting go so easily. A knight rushed to the captain, reporting they'd found a breach on the village's far side. The blonde immediately realized that all this time had been wasted. On the other side, Leo tried to escape the crowd of furious knights. The Holy Knight kept thinking about everything that had happened. And thinking about the recent discovery of the elf, Lib realized it was a trap. Thinking this, she asked the subordinate which way the passage was. Receiving the answer, the blonde instantly decided to use her special ability right away. It turned out to be a radiant sword dance, and with it, Lib charged forward boldly. At that moment, Belle, in the middle of the cave, concluded it was enough distance. The royal warriors couldn't understand why the long-eared one suddenly stopped. In that same instant, the protagonist's words came to mind. When people stand in a single line, he'll need to use his skill. When he was still in Mudrak, the light-haired one handed the screaming all to him. With this, the elf will grow much stronger, becoming a fierce competitor in battle. And in the next moment, a dark strike surged through the cave. The knights only grew eager at the sight of him, ready to charge. But when they began to feel the full, mighty power of the elf's attack, they became frightened. Shamari understood she and her comrades couldn't withstand the onslaught. Suddenly, a majestic glow appeared between the attack of darkness and the knights. The yellow dot aimed to disperse the Dark Elf's attack with fierce determination. The one wielding such power was the Holy Knight Lib, intent on ending the long-eared foe. In this way, two opposing energies came into contact with one another. Looking at the blonde, Belle felt the unimaginable weight of wielding her blade. In his time, the Holy Knight, emerging from the enemy's sight, ended up behind him. But the green-eyed man, reacting in time, wasn't about to lose so easily. At that moment, the elite knight reached for his second blade, intending to use it. Watching this scene, Belle was struck by the skill of his opponent. He immediately recalled the hero's words about what to do if he met a blonde with twin blades. At that moment, Ji-hoon shared with the elf that he was the only one who could truly compete with her. Belle, fighting the knight, realized how he was on a completely different level. At that moment, Shamari saw two rapidly moving silhouettes in front of her. She couldn't believe that a monster could rival the commander in skill. Moving toward the green-eyed one, he managed to dodge the girl's attack with ease. At the same time, a smirk appeared on his face as he realized what his opponent was capable of. With these thoughts, the dark elf concluded that he could handle her. After that, a powerful darkness formed before the blonde, created by Belle, seeing which, the blue-eyed girl, not daring to yield, activated the dance of light swords. At the same time, the remaining knights heard a strange sound coming from the depths of the caves. The knight reported to the captain how he found a shortcut. He also shared how he noticed the monsters escaping through another exit. After listening to the warrior, Uros realized the monsters had abandoned their village. Bianca said that everything is fine with Lib because she tied a part of Ryan to her. While the battle raged, a red eye appeared in the girl's shadow. That very Ryan noted it was remarkable that the monster could fight a human on equal terms. The dark elf himself was already quite exhausted, which was evident from his condition. Returning to Uros, he noted how no one could defeat Lib in single combat. Approximately 84 characters. With these words, he decided to focus on carrying out the king's orders. The knights behind gained a speed boost, their movements now swifter. Confused, people whispered among themselves, feeling their bodies grow lighter, unsure of the cause. The bearded man told the running warrior to show the way. He planned to attack the monsters. Leaving Ria's territories, looking up at the sky, she thought about how she had counted on the stars to rise after they left. Just then, an arrow suddenly flew past her head, appearing out of nowhere. Watching the tip plunge into the slug's body, the fox was astonished. The liquid monster itself was completely indifferent to the arrow. Then the white-haired woman, looking back, thought the knights had caught up. When her gaze turned forward, an emotion of fear flashed across Ria's face because a huge crowd of armored people was walking right behind the monsters. After that, the line of archers drew back the strings of their bows. And in an instant, a vast multitude of arrows rushed towards the monsters. Without hesitating, Tor shouted to the slime squad to react faster. Then the Slug King, issuing orders, pointed his kin in the right direction. And after a few seconds, a living wall appeared before the fleeing horde of monsters. Slugs began to be shot en masse by the little people, feeling only a sense of discomfort. But after a while, the semi-liquid creatures didn't care about anything anymore. The people in armor are only now realizing how their physical attacks aren't working. Without losing a moment, the bull man told all his comrades to run. The Euros on the other side declared that none of them would leave. The next moment, the bearded man struck the ground with his hammer, causing a tremor. A massive crack formed, heading straight toward the enemy because of it. It was a unique ability possessed by an elite knight, known as the Fracture Impulse. The monsters, seeing the rising ground before them, couldn't hide their surprise. And so, to our great regret, the path of retreat was completely blocked. Uros, seizing the moment, ordered his subordinates to attack the monsters. As the approaching knights drew near, Ria wondered what they should do next. But then Tor broke her thoughts, ordering everyone to prepare for battle. The monsters, realizing they couldn't escape, decided to stand and fight back. Most of them were greatly inspired, as they finally had a chance to take revenge. The fox, watching all this, was amazed by the zeal of her companions. But later she thought about how Ji-hoon planned to prepare for the future, but now she can't do anything. Fortunately for everyone, the moon appeared among the clouds, accompanied by effects for the monsters, noticing which, Ria still decided to fight the people alongside her kin. Thus, the monster faction led by Ria advanced toward the enemy, 72 characters. Though they had a numerical advantage, humans were an order of magnitude higher in rank and levels. Beyond the mountains, a loud sound of breaking rocks was heard. After that, Leo appeared, having skillfully dodged the attack from the elite knight. The long-eared one understood how neither light nor darkness held any advantage, but to repel his direct attack was an unthinkable action for him. But now the dark elf realized that this girl was rightly called the strongest warrior. Next, a loud roar snapped Bell out of his thoughts, and he quickly glanced that way. And there, the green-eyed one saw a running crowd of knights, which surprised him. At that moment, the blonde rushed at her opponent, not wanting to stay still. Looking towards the long-eared one, he heard human words about the army being in grave danger ahead. The Holy Knight shared with the enemy how she counts monsters as lesser beings in battle. It simply doesn't affect her, she concluded, looking at her opponent. The long-eared one, trying to deflect the girl's blades, understood nothing. Then Sharon appeared in the middle of the aisle with knights. Seeing her comrade, Lib understood the battle with the monsters had begun. Just as he moved towards them, in the middle of the battlefield, Taurus raised his hammer to strike. Taking the hit with his shield, the knight noticed that the monster, despite its size, was nothing special. Then a series of lightning-fast strikes were launched at the beast folk. On the other side of the battlefield, the monsters screamed in piercing pain. Watching this terrible chaos, the bull became very worried for the lives of its herd. With each minute, the number of monsters decreased. There were now 912. After some more time, the number decreased to 843. Seeing how people brutally exterminated everyone in their path, Tower became frightened. While he was in shock, a knight with a spear appeared behind the bull. Only a moment later did the knight notice the suddenly appearing hand. The owner, who turned out to be Rhea, arrived just in time to help her friend. Turning to Taurus, the fox asked him to persevere despite the sacrifices and injuries. As long as they still breathe, their battle against humans won't end in a pitiful defeat. Even if everyone here falls, as long as Ji-hoon lives, they will never lose. When the girl finished her speech, a couple of people appeared behind her. The knights, aiming to kill the wretched monster, only reached the ground beneath them. And then they themselves lost their heads with one quick swipe of their claws. Observing everything that was happening, Bianca assumed that the fox was the commander. But as the blonde talked to herself, a huge bull appeared behind her. Sadly, the red eye spotted him, appearing in the shadow of the elite knight, and in an instant, a large black spike pierced the body of the beast man. By this time, an adversary with the call sign Babilo had appeared before the fox. The deputy commander of the Haltabaran Knightly Order became very angry. Noting how the monster killed his subordinates, Babilo intended to kill the fox, after which the enormous club rushed towards the enemy, but Ria was faster. Suddenly, the weapon of the deputy commander began to emit an immense heat. Seeing it, the white-haired woman instantly knew what would happen in the next moments. And then a massive fiery wave surged toward the beast's den. 68 characters. The fox herself was just fine, as she'd used her elemental power. Approximately 78 characters. Watching the water's radiant energy, Babilo was deeply shocked by it. Approximately 76 characters. Raya attacked the enemy from behind without waiting for a reaction. Using her strength, the girl enveloped her claws in the element of water. After that, the attack called Water Sting pierced the enemy's body right through. In a couple of seconds, the lifeless body of the deputy commander fell to the ground. But that was just the start, because then a hammer appeared next to Ria. With its force, the white-haired girl was sent hurtling into the stone mountains. The pain was so immense that she began spitting blood. 68 characters. Oros shared how uneasy he felt about drawing the worst card in the game. But losing Babilo too, he couldn't bear to endure that any longer. The fox, seeing the bearded man approach, felt unbearable pain in her arm. It was broken, approximately 100 characters. Uros, who had arrived, decided to end today's misfortune on his side, approximately 76 characters. And then the brute raised his hammer, intending to finish off the fox. But when the weapon had already been fired, a crack appeared in the stone wall to the side. Hearing a strange cracking sound, the bearded man quickly glanced in that direction, after which a red beam appeared, erasing everything in its path completely. When the fox saw the familiar attack, an emotion of joy appeared on her face. The power of that blow was so colossal that everyone involved in the slaughter turned their attention to it. Meanwhile, Ji-hoon himself was surprised that the bearded man had managed to survive a direct hit. Now the main character understood why this man is rightfully one of the elite knights of the kingdom. He was a character from a game with 100 waves, codenamed Taurus. The bearded man once thought that the legendary knight had appeared before him. In the next moment, the rabbit rushed forward, intending to offer her help. The girl noticed how she could now pass the baton to Ji-hoon. Hearing these words, the protagonist simply asked them to rely on him. Tower saw the elder arrive and knew at once how the lizard folk were involved. The boy tried to remember every bit of information about Uros. The bearded man, seeing how they were looking at him, wondered how long the blonde would stand there. After which he himself, addressing the legendary knight, told him to attack. In response, Ji-hoon told the elite knight not to rush, as it was only the beginning. The main forces have finally arrived, accompanied by the protagonist. Realizing there would be a mass attack, Taurus told his men to raise their shields. The young man on the other side ordered the lizards to attack. Lined up in a single row, the people intended to defeat the enemy just as they would wolves. Only then did the protagonist tell the lizard folk to use beast form. And in the next moment, one huge haze formed from the transformations. Seeing the strangeness of the monster's actions, one of the knights suggested it was a smokescreen. And Uros continued to rally his people, reminding them how they were fighting pathetic lizards. But seeing the silhouettes emerge from the mist, the people couldn't agree with the captain's words. The pathetic lizard's massive limb, according to Taurus, crushed one of the men. Now the bearded man, seeing the true form of the lizard folk, realized the full danger. In the next moments, a huge crowd of scaly creatures broke through the warriors' defense. One man tried to cheer himself up, telling himself he was a great soldier for the kingdom. Only the greatest warrior lost his head in a fleeting, desperate moment. Thus, other monsters witnessed the full might of the lizard folk firsthand. They all couldn't hide their greatly surprised expressions. Uros, finding himself in the air, couldn't accept that his strategy had been ruined. Calling opponents pathetic monsters, the bearded man wanted to vent his anger. With one precise strike, the bearded man slammed the enormous scaly carcass into the ground. Upon landing, he casually inquired about who would be the next in line for death. Seeing the huge crowd, the bearded man decided to fight them all. The appearing Dayrak thought otherwise. He decided to deal with the human leader on his own. Moving to Rhea, she couldn't understand how help had arrived so quickly at all. Hearing the question, Rain shared with her friend that it was thanks to Ji-hoon's new magic. When the crowd of lizards led by the boy reached the river, they decided to take a break. Seeing the lizards weakened by the unfamiliar climate, Ji-hoon realized they wouldn't last till midday at this pace. At that time, Rain suggested finding a way to spray water while running. With this thought, the blonde decided to find out who controlled the needed element, but there was none. Thinking about the absence of the right companion, the young man remembered Rhea, who possessed a special water skill. And all thoughts were focused on finding a way out of this situation. The main character noticed a creature in the water emitting a purple glow. When that turned around, Ji-hoon immediately realized that it was a real mermaid. Seeing the beauty of the blonde, he was very surprised. Looking at her, he shared with Rain how he saw a beautiful mermaid ahead of them. But when the rabbit looked at the indicated spot, she saw nothing there at all. The most amazing thing, the green-eyed girl said, happened a bit further on. When the foreman approached the part of the river where, he claimed, the mermaid was found, a large column of water rose, splashing waves onto the shore in its wake. The pair behind them, consisting of Dayrak and Rain, were astonished by such a sight. And the fox listening to this story was of the same opinion as the others. At that very moment, Raya turned her gaze towards the main character. Even Ji-hoon on the battlefield realized how clear things had become to him. I just managed to see a mermaid in the river while no one understood. Then Ji-hoon remembered the system window with the Soul Catcher's communion. From that very moment, the protagonist gains the ability to see deceased beings. And this was the main ability of the blonde-haired seer, seeing many wandering souls before him. When the young boy first saw the mention of the Soul Catcher, he didn't pay much attention to it. But on the first day, he spotted a lizard radiating a vibrant purple aura around it. In this world, there is nothing strange about living beings emitting an aura visible to the eye. Everything was something that united all the deceased beings. They regretted their own death. The two warring sides, who recently met, didn't understand the point of their killings. Each spirit in the huge crowd mumbled about how they didn't want to die. Listening to all possible remarks, Ji-hoon surmised that these were their last words before death. Even Bambilla seemed to regret not being able to take revenge. Touching the spirit, the main character began to draw in the aura it radiated. The duo watching this spectacle couldn't understand what he was up to, but as the boy stood there, a knight of the kingdom appeared behind him. Seeing all this, the fox became very worried about the main character. When she tried to shout at him, the very knight had already aimed his spear. But at that moment, the light-haired hand began to emit a familiar melting temperature. The white-haired woman also recognized this ability belonging to the last opponent. And then, the royal warrior he saw before him, a lightning-fast fist of flame. This was a powerful ability known as the explosive fire strike. After using the new power, the spirit of the mermaid behind began to fade away. Later, the boy saw that very creature starting to rise up into the sky. As soon as he borrowed the knight's power, the mermaid's might immediately vanished, which meant that Ji-hoon could only use one power at a time. Watching from the sidelines, Bianca immediately realized that the legendary hero could steal abilities. But this turn of events even made the white-haired woman laugh, so she grinned. The elite knight regained consciousness, sensing a nauseating smell. And the next moment, a lizard attacked the spot where the white-haired one had stood. What Ji-hoon saw next truly left him, to put it mildly, stunned. It was all because the white-haired girl had survived and still felt awful. After which, two horns appearing from nowhere pierced the scaly one's head right through. The shadow of Bianca behind her was pleased to sense the blood of her opponent. The young man himself thought it would be bad to face such a problematic opponent. Deciding to leave him to the crowd of scaly ones, Ji-hoon activated Monster Vision. Allows you to see a map displaying both allies and enemies in real time. White dots are allies, and black dots are enemies. A marker appears above the dots of squad members. Spotting the white-marked dot alone with the black dot, the young man realized it was Dayrak. In the next moment, a massive approaching dot appeared before the light-haired boy. It was an elite knight, flying past Ji-hoon and heading toward the mountains. Upon hitting the obstacle in its path, a loud crash was heard, accompanied by a cloud of dust. The sender turned out to be Dayrak, who was already quite wounded. But that wasn't all, because next, the scaly creature utilized the skill known as muscle enhancement. For a few short seconds, the huge body was right in front of Uros. With a single swing of his tail, Dayrak forced his opponent to crash into the mountain. Nearby, a fox and a rabbit were stunned by such a breathtaking spectacle. The elite knight, unwilling to lose, placed his hammer in front of him, thus beginning to freeze up. And then, after looking up, he once again saw the scaly creature approaching him. Once again, the bearded man thought about how he'd drawn the wrong card. When the bearded man mentally apologized to the king, a blow occurred. The young man himself thought about how lucky they were to have met an elite support knight outside the kingdom. Thus, the kingdom's bully faced defeat due to his own misfortune and failure. Still, running into Urosh and Bianca here is a very strange thing. At that moment, the hero remembered the words of the man with the silver ring in his lip, about how elite knights aren't just two, there are far more than that number. Recalling Bombardier Akur and Fanatic Archeon, the lad had already counted 2. As he reflected on the others, Ji-hoon counted at least 6 knights in total. Bianca, seeing that Uros had been defeated, wasn't too upset. She decided to return to the kingdom. Dayrak, who had approached, shared how he had first clashed in battle with such a strong opponent. But at least the protagonist now has one less enemy to worry about. Then the hero remembered Belle, who had taken on the dangerous role of bait. He noticed how the elf is the one who must not lose, even if a group of foes overwhelms him. But upon learning that the long-eared one is still in one place, the boy realized there's another elite knight there. Worried about his comrade, the protagonist decided to use the communication skill. At that moment, the battered Leo shared how he hadn't expected the opponent to be so strong. Having disarmed, the elf had already begun to prepare for the end of his life. And then one of Lib's blades, radiating light energy, moved towards the opponent. Suddenly, a huge crack formed beneath the girl's feet, causing her to shift slightly. Even such a tiny movement was enough for the long-eared creature to end up with a single cut. Then, Ji-hoon's voice echoed in his head, reminding him of the contract. After the protagonist's words, Leo remembered how he had promised to serve for 10 years. By this time, a rift had formed between the pair, separating them from each other. The light-eyed one running to help ordered the long-eared not to give up at all. After all, in the end, it would be a breach of contract. Hearing this, Leo was surprised. Noticing the approaching young man, the holy knight Lib recognized him. Once she met him in the kingdom, where the blonde man introduced himself as a regular citizen. The blonde remembered how one day she was resting from military duties. She noticed 2 guys who had defaced a flyer featuring the wanted criminal's face. At that moment, the girl once again saw the legendary knight right before her eyes. Then the forbidden hammer from Uros touched the blades of the enemy. The main character visibly expressed joy at meeting someone who could complete the game. When the boy was in his homeworld, many tried to complete the game, but they couldn't succeed. In the end, the main character was the only one who figured out how to pass the 100th wave. There are 2 such conditions, which Ruru helped us to discover along the way. The first is a hidden item that drops from the boss of the 99th wave. After dissecting the heart of the cold-blooded dragon Reiseldrake, the young man received another item called the Dragon Soul. The second condition is finding a creature capable of entering into synergy with the dragon. It turned out to be the Holy Knight Lib, who must then be allowed to progress. So, if she disappears, the kingdom won't be able to hold back the 100th wave. And then time might just be on the hero's side after all. In the battle, Ji-hoon decided to resort to using a devastating blow, by the mighty power of which the Holy Knight was sent into flight. Nearby, Shamari was deeply worried about the captain's condition and well-being. At one point, the blonde, crashing into a stone mountain, took a lot of damage. When the guy's mana was completely depleted, he signaled for the next attack. The appearing Dayrak had to finish off the blonde with his weapon. But Saint Lib herself was greatly surprised, looking at the approaching point. In the next instant, the scaled creature's weapon pierced the man's body clean through. Even the lizard man was surprised by who he hit with his weapon, and it's all because Shamari took on the scaled one's attack, wanting to save her friend. The blonde, looking at the bloody back of the fair-haired woman, couldn't believe it was all real. At first, Shamari ordered the commoner Lib to play with her. Since that moment, a lot has changed. This duo has experienced so much together. But now one of them was left half dead, to the terror of the other. The blonde, looking at her friend's body, couldn't believe what was happening. And then, a ring of light, it formed around the girl, rising up into the sky. At the sight of which Dayrak was struck, for he had not expected such a turn of events. Watching from the side, Ji-hoon remembered how Lib was described in the game as always calm, with no sudden emotional shifts. But now this girl, looking at the scaled creature, swore to kill it. Later, Lib grabbed the blade with her broken hand, ignoring the pain it caused her. The protagonist showed nothing but surprise in his every look. Suddenly, Bianca appeared behind the blonde, saying it was time for them to leave. After these words, a huge dark shadow formed in the center where the two elite warriors stood. Without wasting any time, the knights began to rush into the area of effect. The only one who refused to leave was Lib, driven by her thirst for revenge. In an instant, the crowd of knights and two elite warriors vanished. At the same time, finding herself safe, the saint pressed her blade to Bianca's throat. Regaining her composure, the girl apologized, and the white-haired one told her to forget it. After all, she's not the only one. Everyone here felt the same way as well. Acknowledging their defeat, the remnants of the surviving army headed for the kingdom. Monsters rejoiced in the victory over humans, fueled by their kin's blood. The main character himself thought about how this was his first battle against a kingdom. But the others went through numerous battles accompanied by a series of defeats. And finally, they achieved a rather significant victory at last. This victory confirmed that the monsters have a chance, but it's too soon to celebrate. A system window appeared in front of the boy, indicating the completion of the task and the acquisition of an ES rank item. Without delay, the protagonist seized the opportunity and took the valuable trinket. Clad in his new attire, Ji-hoon declared that it was their turn to attack. Back with the surviving knights, they were already in kingdom territory. People immediately recognized the punitive squad that left days ago. The Ares, who had been on guard all this time, sought to learn his friend's fate. Rushing toward the small group of knights, he tried to grasp what was happening. Suddenly facing the blonde, the spearman addressed her directly. Taking Lib's armor, the light-haired one tried to find out what happened to them. But in response, Ares received a gaze filled with emptiness from the girl. At that time, the spearman decided to get the info from Commander Uros. Only when the blonde man didn't find him in the small crowd of knights was he surprised. At the same time, the ordinary residents nearby also noticed the absence of the commander. Passing by, Bianca shared how the monsters of the legendary hero ended up on a completely different level. Hearing these words, the fair-haired man began to blame himself for not being with his comrades. Bianca assured Ares that he wouldn't be able to change anything either. The white-haired woman set off, sharing her plan to report everything to the king. Trying to process all of Bianca's words, the spearman shared that if such monsters truly exist, then the kingdom would be doomed. In response, the white-haired woman told Ares not to worry needlessly. And it's all because the gap was due to just a few factors. Upon entering the throne room, Bianca reported that only 30 out of 500 had survived. Commander Uros fell in battle, the white-haired woman concluded, addressing her father. After listening to his daughter, the king told her to show him all she saw, and in the next moment, two shadowy figures rushed toward the king. As they fussed in his shadow, the bearded man closed his eyes, wishing to see Bianca's experiences. Learning everything, the king now understood what the legendary hero truly is. After that, he wondered if this could really be the 13th ability. A few days after the massive battle, the monsters decided to relocate to Mudrak. For superhumans, this place turned out to be not the most suitable climate. But at the very end of the Mudrak, a narrow path was found, and it was worth taking. New residents saw the view of the reverse side of the Twin Peaks surrounding Mudrak. While the beast folk found a home with sunlight and clean water, the slugs found Mudrak to be perfect for them. Moving to the main character, he handed over the Howling Awl, telling Bella to take it. Hearing the elf's surprised words, the boy shared how he acquired the skill of repairing things. After a period of adaptation, Ji-hoon decided to convene a war council. The recent battle clarified a few things. Dirac, being A rank, defeated an ES rank opponent, all thanks to the colossal gap in levels. The young man felt this when he borrowed power. The peak level of Uros was 25, which meant it was the limit for most elite knights at that moment. But the kingdom will continue to grow, reflecting the endless monster raids. This means they must make use of the time they have, concluded the hero. Dirac also shared how his opponent exuded an aura far more powerful than his own. But the battle's outcome was decided by experience. Parnik noted this accurate analysis. Next, the main character told his comrades that there are no more than 11 such people. From this, Lyrak understood that the kingdom had 11 warriors of Dirac's level. Then they can use Dragon's Breath, and their defensive advantage will disappear. Hearing these words from Bell, the fair-haired man agreed, but he realized that they could only pull this off, if all 11 warriors managed to gather at one single point. Next, Ji-hoon noticed how their attacks could simply be absorbed, because among the elite knights, there are those who can create strong barriers. Recognizing the perfect moment to attack again, the young man realized he needed more reliable information. Moving to the holy knight Lib, she gazed into the endless waters, contemplating all that had happened. A woman nearby shared how she heard about the bonds of Shamari and Lib. Having learned from the blonde how Mari hated commoners, the same woman remarked how contradictory it sounded. This was Asteria, an elite knight in service to the High Priestess, who shared her appreciation for Lib's unique abilities. For a commoner, the limit is a senior knight. For any woman, it's a middle-rank knight. Hearing those words, the blonde asked her not to exaggerate her position, because if she hadn't yielded to the legendary knight back then, things would be different. Closing the fan, the green-eyed woman noted the oddness of the holy knight's words, because she can still see, albeit faintly, the star belonging to Shamari. Hearing these words, the blonde woman at the same time hastily looked up, and there, her eyes fell upon a star, particularly striking in its brilliance. Returning to the main character, he entered the house and inquired about the person's condition. The rabbit shared that the girl is still unconscious, but the worst has already passed for her. After learning all he needed, the hero praised the rabbit, which she was happy about. Moving a little into the past, Ji-hoon was surprised that the night had survived. Noticing rain approaching, the boy emphasized how timely she was arriving. Examining the light-haired girl, the rabbit woman said she might try to save her after all. In response, Ji-hoon asked the beast woman to heal the girl, as he truly believes in her. After these words, the doe decided to save the man that very instant, because the elder believes in her more than any other rabbit. As she was heading out, Rhea asked the young man why he saved the knight. In response, the blonde-haired man shared that by saving this person, he had gambled one of his own lives. Before attacking the kingdom, the main character decided to fulfill one condition. With these thoughts, the boy found himself at the cage holding the prisoners. Seeing a familiar face, the people inside grew deeply suspicious. 72 characters. Back then, Ji-hoon shared how he had a proposal for one of them. 73 characters. To the knight hiding their gender, the boy decided to go to the kingdom with them.